Next up, Wang Hao. A low mechanical hum emanated from the massive divine realm awakening instrument mounted above the podium. A pale white floating test sphere hovered midair. Seconds later, the automated female voice echoed across the large lecture hall. Divine realm area, 50,000 square meters. Attached ability, plant acceleration. Instantly boosts the growth and maturation of flora. Rated grade F. Overall evaluation, grade F, divine realm. The student named Wang Hao sighed and trudged back to his seat with his head hung low. Murmurs rippled through the crowd of classmates. 50,000 square meters is way too small. It's still something, though. With plant acceleration, he can grow spirit herbs and sell them for credits to get by. Zhang Hai, the interim head teacher, gripped his roster and called out the next name. Guhan, come forward. Guhan stood and walked toward the awakening device. He was a transmigrator, having lived in this parallel world for 18 years. Upon turning 18, every university student qualified for a free awakening of their personal inner divine realm. Awakening at official professional facilities cost a staggering 100,000 credit points, a sum his family could never afford. He had poured every effort into his studies, and he had waited desperately for this very moment. The divine realms of this world operated under a unique temporal rule. 1 full year inside a divine realm equaled just a single day in the outside world. By purchasing resource cards to nurture life within his realm, the more prosperous his domain became, the stronger the life force fed back to his physical body. Anyone who forged a divine realm was guaranteed a minimum lifespan of 100 years. Even greater feats were possible. Once fifth-tier transcendent life forms spawned within the realm, the host would break mortal shackles to ascend to demigodhood, gaining superhuman physical prowess and a lifespan surging to 300 years. Guhan pressed his palm flat against the test sphere. A faint electric current shot from his palm straight to his temples. A thunderous boom resounded deep within his mind. A vast empty world materialized in his consciousness, much like a newly generated game map. At the same instant, the numerical readouts on the awakening instrument spiked wildly, drawing every pair of eyes to the panel. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, 500,000. The numbers finally froze. Divine realm area, 700,000 square meters. The entire classroom erupted in an uproar. Holy hell, 700,000 square meters. That's absurd initial foundation. My brother only had 600,000 when he awakened, earned a grade B rating. And now he's a key recruit for the military district. Guhan scored top marks across the entire county and stayed local for college because his family couldn't cover city tuition fees. This kid's about to skyrocket. Zhao Su, seated in the front row, twisted around with a dark scowl on his face. He had just awakened a 400,000 square meter realm and had smugly assumed he stood unrivaled among this year's freshmen. Now Guhan had not only outmatched him, but nearly doubled his total area. Zhang Hai clutched his roster so tightly his knuckles whitened, his breathing growing heavy with excitement. 700,000 square meters of starting space meant an easy S-tier overall rating, provided his accompanying ability was halfway decent. The school principal would be overjoyed, but the awakening instrument's announcement was far from finished. The test sphere flickered twice, casting a line of glowing green text into the air. Attached ability, mandatory spawning. Enables 2 organisms to produce offspring through targeted genetic pairing. Ability rating, grade F. Overall rating adjusted, final evaluation, grade C, divine realm. A beat of dead silence blanketed the classroom. It shattered the next second with thunderous, mocking laughter loud enough to rattle the ceiling tiles. Haha, mandatory spawning? What an utterly useless gimmick ability. Nothing but a glorified supply chain worker. I'm dying laughing. It's ranked the lowest possible grade F. He's got an enormous empty field paired with the most worthless ability imaginable. What's he even supposed to do with it? Guhan, you might as well dedicate your realm to livestock farming. Your ability will crank out piglets non-stop. You could supply all the pork for the school cafeteria single-handedly. It's not completely useless, I guess. He'll never need to buy breeding resource cards ever again. Jeering remarks and taunts washed over Guhan from every direction. Zhao Su joined in the sneering and shook his head in disdain. He'd been terrified Guhan would outshine him completely. Yet the boy was nothing more than a joke. He no longer had to endure his father's constant comparisons. His own grade A realm stood leagues above Guhan's mediocre grade C. Without combat-focused abilities or utilities for domain construction, a large divine realm amounted to nothing more than an oversized vacant plot of land. Zhang Hai slammed his fist hard against the lectern to restore order. Quiet down this instant. Do any of you have room to mock others with your own mediocre ratings? The noise faded slightly, yet many students continued snickering behind their hands. Zhang Hai turned to Gu Han, his tone heavy with pity as he offered consolation. You may return to your seat for now, Gu Han. A grade C rating is far from a failure. Mandatory spawning lets you rapidly multiply populations within your realm. You can build a stable livelihood by specializing in livestock cultivation. His words held merit. Creatures living inside divine realms possessed genuine sentience and emotions, rarely reproducing naturally outside their innate biological cycles. Guhan calmly pulled his hand away from the sphere. 2 lifetimes of experience had tempered his mindset, and he walked back to his seat down the aisle, completely unfazed by the ridicule swirling around him. He pulled up the status panel for his inner divine realm within his mind. Divine Ruler, Guhan Divine Realm Area, 700,000 square meters awakened ability. Mandatory spawning forces paired organisms to generate new hybrid offspring. Livestock farming? A cold smirk tugged at Guhan's lips. These people thought far too rigidly inside the box. Who had written a rule that mandatory spawning only worked for members of the same species? The ability description was explicit. It only required 2 living beings to create progeny. The wording held boundless potential. What would emerge if he paired a giant dragon with a domestic pig? What traits would surface if he crossed centipedes with farm chickens? This ability rendered natural reproductive barriers entirely irrelevant. If wielded cleverly, he could engineer countless unprecedented hybrid species never seen in this world. The artificial intelligence evaluating the ability had failed to account for interspecies genetic fusion, hence the unfairly low-grade F classification. Guhan settled back into his chair quietly, waiting for the remainder of the awakening ceremony to conclude. Half an hour later, every student in the class had finished their awakening assessments. Zhang Hai opened a black briefcase, inserted his faculty ID into the card slot, and unlocked the case after a series of inputs. The Ministry of Education has allocated stipend credit points for each of you, meant to fund the initial development of your divine realms. These are government-issued starting resources to kickstart your domain construction. Collect your access cards when your name is called. Wang Hao, Grade E Evaluation, 2,000 restricted credit points. Zhao Su, Grade A Evaluation, 100,000 restricted credit points. Zhao Su walked up to collect his card with his face glowing with pride. He slowed deliberately as he passed Guhan's desk and waved his new card ostentatiously. Guhan did not lift his gaze, choosing to ignore the petty display. His father worked as a laborer for Zhao Su's family, and picking a fight now would only bring unnecessary trouble to his household. He focused instead on his own anticipated credit allocation. A Grade A rating came with 100,000 restricted points. He could only wonder how much a Grade C would grant him. Restricted credit points could only be spent on Divine Realm supplies and were forbidden for personal daily expenses, but the sum would still be invaluable for a cash-strapped student like himself. Guhan, Grade C Evaluation, 10,000 restricted credit points, Zhang Hai called out. Only 10,000? Guhan cursed the short-sighted assessment algorithm inwardly as he accepted the card from his teacher and let out a quiet sigh. Still, he had no intention of arguing his case. His ability's true power was far too anomalous to reveal publicly, lest greedy parties, even school faculty included, target him. The legal frameworks governing divine realm owners were loose at best, especially for those who wielded transcendent divine power. The awakening instrument hummed to a silent halt at the front of the classroom. Zhang Hai handed out the remaining credit cards and snapped his briefcase shut. He cleared his throat and swept his gaze over the varied expressions across the classroom. You may allocate your restricted points freely, but I strongly advise waiting until class placement tomorrow. Your new homeroom teachers will assess your realm size and abilities to draft personalized long-term development plans before you purchase any resource cards. His tone carried earnest warning. Poor initial resource allocation will waste your funding irreparably. The school bell rang, and students flooded out of the classroom. Guhan tucked his 10,000-point card into his pocket and hurried off campus. After walking through several bustling main thoroughfares, the high-rise cityscape faded into cramped, shabby residential blocks crisscrossed by tangled overhead wires that blocked much of the sky. This was where Guhan's family made their home. He pushed open a rusted metal gate, greeted by the warm aroma of home cooking drifting from inside the small house. "Brother, you're home." His younger sister Gu Xian poked her head out of the kitchen, holding a handful of green onions, her eyes sparkling with eager anticipation. "Yeah." Guhan kicked off his shoes, washed his hands, and sat down at the cramped square dining table. A moment later, His father Gu Yanxiao carried out a plate of scallion omelets and removed his apron, his face tight with nervousness. His mother Tang Yinran set 2 bowls of rice before Gu Han and sat down beside him. The 4 family members gathered around the table amid a heavy, tense silence. How did the awakening ceremony go today? Gu Yanxiao picked up his chopsticks only to set them back down, rubbing his palms anxiously against his trousers. I awakened successfully, Gu Han replied evenly as he spooned rice into his mouth. 700,000 square meters of realm space. Overall rating is grade C. Complete silence fell over the dining room for a heartbeat. 700,000. Gu Xian's chopsticks nearly slipped from her fingers in shock. Brother, that's incredible. A classmate told me her older brother only got 500,000 square meters for his realm. Joy bloomed across Tang Yinran's face as she nodded repeatedly. I always knew my son had extraordinary potential. 700,000 square meters is the starting benchmark for children from wealthy clans. Gu Yanxiao's brows relaxed for a split second before furrowing once more, catching the critical detail immediately. A 700,000 square meter domain should never receive just a grade C rating. What is your bonded ability? Gu Han set down his bowl and chopsticks, giving a vague answer. It's a population propagation skill. The AI ranked it grade F, dragging down my overall evaluation. The room went quiet once again. The smile froze solid on Gu Yanxiao's face, and Tang Yinran stared blankly ahead. In this world, divine realms only flourished rapidly when paired with powerful abilities. Growth acceleration, environmental adaptation, elemental infusion, bloodline purification were all mainstream, highly sought after divine skills. Generic propagation abilities were viewed as mundane, low-value utilities. It's still a solid skill to have. Tang Yinran recovered quickly, scooping a chunk of meat onto Gu Han's bowl with a forced smile. It's a practical trade regardless. You can build a livestock breeding business to secure steady income and stable living conditions for our family. Gu Yanxiao ate a few mouthfuls of plain rice before pushing his bowl aside. He pulled a cheap cigarette from his pocket, thought better of lighting it with his wife and daughter present, and stuffed it back into the pack. Honor. His voice came out rough and gravelly as he met his son's eyes directly. Perhaps it's best if you drop out of university. Gu Xian froze mid-motion, her face draining of color as she bit down hard on her lower lip. Gu Han said nothing, holding his father's gaze calmly. You know our family's financial struggles well enough. Your vast realm space is impressive, but university enrollment means constant spending on resource cards and building stable ecological systems within your domain. Every single step requires massive amounts of credits. Gu Yanxiao avoided his son's stare, fixating on the grain patterns etched into the wooden tabletop. You've already awakened your divine realm. You could stay home, develop livestock farming within your 700,000 square meters, or lease portions of your realm to large merchant guilds for passive income. We'd never struggle to put food on the table again. His voice dropped to a pained murmur. Your sister will sit for her university entrance exams next year. She's a top student. But gaining awakening eligibility through college will cost another fortune. We cannot afford to fund 2 students' realm development expenses. It was a cruel reality. Countless impoverished families scraped together every penny to fund their children's high school education solely for this single shot at a government-funded free divine realm awakening. Even without attending university post-awakening, a person could use their inner realm to earn credits and climb the social ladder. Gu Han fully understood his parents' burdens and felt no resentment toward his father, nor any sense of unfair favoritism. His parents had sacrificed everything to support him through 18 years of life up to his awakening day. He glanced over at Gu Xian across the table. His sister had stopped eating entirely, her shoulders trembling faintly with quiet guilt. Yet her eyes still held quiet hope for her own future. I plan to continue my university studies, father, mother. Gu Han's tone remained calm, yet unshakably resolute. University coursework will teach me systematic methods to develop my divine realm efficiently, and the school has already issued a stipend of credit points. Do not worry about Xinxin's tuition fees. I will find a way to cover all costs myself. He stood and offered his sister a gentle smile. Study hard for your exams, Xinxin. If I truly cannot gather enough funds, I will lease sections of my divine realm to save money for your university fees. With that, Gu Han walked into his bedroom and closed the door behind him. In the living room, Gu Xian blinked back tears and quietly stood to clear the leftover dishes. The running tap water in the kitchen masked the thick silence hanging over the household. Tang Yinran stared at Gu Han's closed bedroom door and sighed deeply, turning toward her husband with a furrowed brow. What if I go to my mother's house to borrow some money? It would be such a waste for him to skip formal higher education with such exceptional foundational realm space. We cannot ask them for anything. Gu Yanxiao shot upward abruptly, humiliation and anguish flashing across his features. His hands clenched tight beneath the table, veins bulging along his knuckles. Your family cut all ties with us ages ago when you chose to leave your clan to marry me. They swore they would never lend us a single credit. His voice was lowered to a bitter whisper. Thankfully, Han inherited your strong constitution, granting him 700,000 square meters of realm space. Leasing that land would easily cover Xinxin's tuition next year. He raked a hand roughly through his hair, his voice heavy with defeat. I am a useless man. I once swore I would never let hardship weigh on my family. Yet now I cannot even afford the basic realm supplies for my son's studies. I've put you three through so much suffering. If all else fails, I can take another loan from Zhao Kuan, or permanently sell partial ownership of my own divine realm. My own power has long faded to nothing anyway. Tears welled up in Tang Yinran's eyes. She reached out to grip her husband's, shaking hands firmly, her tone soft, yet steady with resolve. Do not blame yourself for any of this. None of your hardships were self-inflicted. Our lives will get better eventually. Gu Han leaned against the inner side of his bedroom door, overhearing every word spoken in the adjacent room. His hands tightened involuntarily at his sides. As a transmigrated soul, he retained crystal-clear memories of every painful incident from his childhood. His mother suffered a severe complication during her pregnancy with him, resulting in extreme premature birth that left his infant body hanging by a thread. To pay for the exorbitant fees of specialized medical incubation pods, Gu Yanxiao had sold off nearly all the high-tier resources he had spent years cultivating within his own divine realm. Even that sum was insufficient to cover the subsequent long-term medical bills. Once a holder of a Grade S combat-focused divine ability, his father had no choice but to join underground life or death divine realm arena matches in the black market to scrape together funds. During a rigged consecutive ambush in one tournament, opponents with vastly superior realm resources wiped out every living creature within his father's domain, collapsing its entire self-sustaining ecosystem and permanently damaging the core foundation of his divine realm. Years of hard-won achievements were destroyed in an instant. The once ambitious and fiery Gu Yanxiao was broken, forced to lease out his own divine realm to outside parties ever since. For all these years, nearly every cent he earned went straight toward household expenses. His father only purchased cheap basic medicine to ease his lingering internal injuries, never setting aside a single credit to rebuild his own lost power. Gu Han understood his father's burdens better than anyone, which was why he had buried himself in textbooks throughout his youth. He had scored first place in the county-wide college entrance examinations the previous year, earning an official admission offer to a top-tier municipal university. He had secretly altered his application form without telling anyone, opting instead for the local ordinary county university. The municipal university would still charge astronomical miscellaneous fees even for admitted scholarship students, while the county school waived all first-year tuition fees for top-performing applicants like himself. He composed his turbulent emotions before walking over to his desk chair. Now that his divine realm had successfully awakened, it was time to execute his carefully laid development plans. Ever since learning the fundamental laws governing this world's divine realms, he had filled 3 thick notebooks with hundreds of contingency plans mapping out every possible starting development path. He pulled open his desk drawer and retrieved a well-worn notebook with a frayed cover. He flipped to the page marked with the heading, Rapid Livestock Development Blueprint. Dense handwriting covered the paper, listing viable starter food chains, organism growth cycles, and corresponding market selling prices for each creature. Gu Han picked up his fountain pen, resting the cap against his chin as he mulled over the data with a slight frown. Every pre-written plan he had drafted assumed standard, conventional divine abilities for domain construction. He had never anticipated awakening such an unconventional, game-changing skill as mandatory spawning. Standard livestock development relied on purchasing baseline cattle or poultry stock and slowly expanding population numbers over time. To generate quick, steady credit income, he first needed to identify the most liquid, high-demand commodities on the public market. Meat products would always be an indispensable staple for the massive underclass population of this world. What novel creatures could he create if he crossbred fast-growing, high-yield domestic chickens with other organisms using his mandatory spawning ability? Gu Han tapped the portable wrist console strapped to his arm, projecting its interface onto his desktop surface. He opened Pindato, the largest public trading platform for divine realm resources, and input search keywords: multi-limbed organisms, multi-winged organisms. The page instantly loaded a lengthy catalog of available goods. Guhan navigated to the generic common creature category first. Centipedes, spiders, mutated giant crabs, deep-sea octopuses. He stared at a giant centipede listed for merely 2 credit points and sank into thought. Centipedes possessed countless segmented limbs. If he crossbred ordinary farm chickens with giant centipedes to craft multi-limbed poultry variants or avian centipede hybrids, each specimen could produce an enormous volume of edible poultry cuts. Such a hybrid organism would function as a literal credit printing machine. He quickly discarded this concept. However, centipedes carried potent natural venom, and any toxic hybrid poultry would result in severe legal penalties if consumed by civilians, landing him in heavy trouble with federal safety regulators. Ordinary creatures would not suffice. Only those with safe, flavorful flesh could help him stand out rapidly. Guhan swiftly swiped across the screen and switched to the exotic creature marketplace section. Prices here were jacked up dozens to 100 times higher, filled with all manner of bizarre creatures that dazzled the eye. 6-winged beasts, 8-armed gibbons, 10-legged land birds. After half an hour of comparison and screening, Guhan's gaze finally locked onto a product listing. 6-winged beast juvenile/adult basic info. For limbs paired with 6 wings, non-toxic omnivore, easy to raise in captivity. Maturation cycle, 100 years in divine realm time. Economic value, exquisitely tender meat infused with trace, transcendent energy. Hailed as the ginseng of meats across the high-end catering industry. Pricing, 300 credit points per juvenile specimen, 3,000 credit points per adult specimen. Guhan carefully combed through customer reviews and detailed parameter sheets attached to the listing. This beast boasted top-tier meat quality, with upscale restaurants placing constant bulk high-price orders for its flesh. Its 4 hooves and 6 fleshy feathered wings were counted as premium delicacies coveted by wealthy elites. Yet it carried a crippling flaw, an excessively long growth cycle. 100 years elapsing within the divine realm translated to a full 100 days in the outer world. It would take more than 3 months just to recoup his investment, a timeline manageable for large merchant conglomerates, but devastating for cash-strapped commoners like Guhan in urgent need of capital turnover. Domestic broiler chickens featured ultra-fast growth and astonishing reproductive rates. 6-winged beasts contributed premium meat genetics alongside their distinctive multi-wing, multi-limb anatomical traits. The 2 species were perfectly complementary. An adult 6-winged beast cost a steep 3,000 credit points, a sum that stung his wallet deeply. Still, fortune favored the bold. Gritting his teeth, Guhan input his purchase quantity on the product page. Purchase 2 adult 6-winged beasts, 1 male and 1 female as specified notes. Upon confirming the transaction, 6,000 of his 10,000 credit points vanished instantly. He then navigated back to the regular poultry zone and spent 10 credit points to purchase a pair of sexually mature broilers, again 1 rooster and 1 hen. Payment successful. Please submit your Divine Realm receiving coordinates. Goods will be delivered via Divine Realm teleportation channel operated by our platform. Guhan closed his eyes, established a spatial anchor by connecting with the Divine Realm residing deep within his consciousness, then transmitted the coordinates to the merchant via his handheld terminal. Official trading platforms offered secure Divine Realm teleport portals with top-tier safety protocols, eliminating risks of coordinate leaks and subsequent raids by Divine Realm bandits. This delivery method had become mainstream across this era. Merchant has dispatched your order. Teleport conduit being constructed. Wasting no time, Guhan sank his entire consciousness into his personal inner Divine Realm. His field of vision stretched wide into an endless expanse. His initial Divine Realm spanned 700,000 square meters, roughly equivalent to 100 standard football fields merged together. This vast open plain represented his undeveloped, pristine Divine Realm territory. The moment Guhan materialized within the space, a pale blue teleport portal tore open the air several dozen meters ahead. 2 bulky creatures, each comparable in size to a fully grown domestic pig, crashed heavily onto the plains with dull thuds, kicking up clouds of dust. These 2 6-winged beasts had stout, rounded torsos with 6 bat-like wings layered in fleshy plumage folded neatly against their backs. 4 thick, sturdy hooves anchored their stocky frames to the ground. Immediately afterward, panicked clucks echoed out as the 2 white feathered broilers tumbled out through the fading portal, landing directly beside one of the 6-winged beasts. The disoriented beasts twitched their nostrils sharply. Evidently, the merchant had shipped them without prior feeding. Being natural omnivores, The larger male six-winged beast let out a rumbling grunt, bared its rows of fine sharp teeth, and lunged toward the male broiler. The rooster panicked, puffing up its feathers and darting frantically across the ground. "Damn my chickens!" A surge of alarm washed over Guhan, prompting him to activate his innate ability, forced genetic breeding. As absolute ruler of this pocket dimension, he wielded complete dominion over its natural laws. The power of world rules descended the second the skill activated, and Guhan mentally assigned matched breeding pairs for the creatures. The female six-winged beast skidded to an abrupt halt less than half a meter away from the panicking rooster. Its rigid posture softened, predatory pupils dilating into a calm, receptive state under the influence of the realm's imposed breeding directive. Meanwhile, the rooster stiffened its neck and strode forward boldly, its plumage standing on end and its comb flaring bright purple-red. It fixed its gaze firmly on the female beast dozens of times its own size. The female six-winged beast lowered itself obediently to the ground, spreading its six wings outward in a compliant posture. The rooster let out a shrill, triumphant crow, vaulting upward onto the beast's broad back to initiate interspecies genetic fusion guided by Guhan's ability. Guhan stood off to the side, staring blankly at the bizarre scene unfolding before him. Who knew this skill worked this literally? Some distance away, the male six-winged beast had set its sights on the female broiler. "Hold on, stop right there." Guhan hurried to suspend the skill, fearful the oversized beast would crush the small hen during the breeding process. Before he could intervene, bright white light enveloped both pairs of experimental subjects, obscuring all observable activity within the glowing aura. Guhan observed the area for several minutes, unable to view the breeding process through the luminous veil. When the light faded, the rooster slumped onto the ground in a fatigued state, while the female six-winged beast wandered about the plain, looking perfectly vigorous. The hen was likewise unharmed, yet the male six-winged beast lay motionless on the ground, its eyes glazed with a strange, dazed expression. Guhan assumed the beast was merely suffering from hunger. He withdrew his consciousness from the divine realm and reopened the trading platform. Sustaining the six-winged beast would demand a substantial supply of feed. He typed "six-winged beast feed" into the search bar, only to recoil at the listed prices. Adult six-winged beasts possessed ravenous appetites, with bulk specialized feed costing thousands of credit points per ton, far beyond his current budget. Shifting his strategy, Guhan reasoned his forced genetic breeding ability worked across animal species, so it ought to function equally well for plant life. Browsing the discounted goods section, he spent a single credit point on 100 common aquatic duckweed specimens. This plant thrived explosively with minimal water requirements, quickly blanketing entire water surfaces once introduced. Next, he researched the dietary preferences of six-winged beasts and learned they favored a grass variant known as spirit grain grass. Biting the bullet, he spent an additional 200 credit points on a bundle of this vegetation. Returning his consciousness to the divine realm, Guhan reshaped the local terrain. A large flat expanse near the beast sank inward to form a 200-square-meter basin, which he filled with underground groundwater drawn from the realm's depths to create a small lake. He emptied all 100 duckweed samples into the lake water, then scattered the spirit grain grass along the entire shoreline. With both plant varieties established, Guhan reactivated his forced genetic breeding skill. An invisible wave washed over the lake and banks, merging duckweed and spirit grain grass into a novel hybrid flora. In direct defiance of standard botanical principles, pinpoint glimmers of white light flickering across the lake's surface. Finishing this task, Guhan clapped his hands in satisfaction. Advanced technology in this parallel world equipped every personal handheld terminal with a basic artificial intelligence assistant. Guhan linked his device to the divine realm and issued detailed orders to the AI, automate the growth, propagation, and division of these hybrid plants, and run continuous rounds of forced crossbreeding whenever new mutated strains emerged. Having delegated all follow-up botanical work to the automated system, Guhan exited the divine realm and headed straight to bed. By the time he woke up, several months would have passed in divine realm time, ample time to yield tangible results from his experiments. Early the next morning, Guhan jolted awake, leaped out of bed, and immediately entered his divine realm to inspect his work. Holy hell! The hen used for crossbreeding paced calmly across the meadow, trailed by 12 oddly shaped offspring lined up neatly behind her. These 12 creatures were noticeably larger than ordinary roosters, bearing 3 pairs of wings on their backs plus 4 sturdy claws on their underbellies. Glossy plumage covered their bodies, and their avian heads retained sharp, pointed beaks. Their robust builds lent them a majestic, griffin-like bearing. Guhan stepped closer to examine the specimens. These six-winged, four-legged chickens had fully inherited the six-winged beast's superior flesh quality while retaining the broiler's unparalleled rapid growth rate. He had struck gold. Toward the lake shore, the large female six-winged beast grazed lazily on the bank vegetation, with six fluffy, white juvenile six-winged beast hatchlings trailing behind her. These young creatures were considerably larger than the hybrid chickens and retained most core physiological traits of pure six-winged beasts, confirming they were still in their early developmental phase. Top-tier breeding performance from that rooster. Purebred six-winged beasts only birthed one offspring per gestation cycle. The rooster's dominant genetic material had triggered a litter of six progeny, marking it as an exceptional breeding specimen. Guhan rested his chin in his hand as he analyzed the two test groups, identifying a critical governing principle. Parental gender dictated the developmental traits of the resulting offspring. Offspring birthed from the hen were oviparous, producing large clutch sizes alongside the broiler's signature accelerated maturation rate. These hybrids had fully matured into adults within just a few months of divine realm time. Conversely, progeny carried by the female six-winged beast were viviparous. Though the crossbreeding broke the single offspring limitation of purebred beasts to produce six young, their growth velocity was markedly slower. These white-furred juveniles remained far from marketable adulthood. I'll prioritize using hens as gestational carriers moving forward, Guhan concluded. Shifting his gaze past the female six-winged beast toward the center of the lake, irritation flickered across his face. The massive male six-winged beast lounged sprawled in the lake waters. The water surface was no longer covered in ordinary duckweed. Automated overnight breeding had blanketed the lake with a brand new hybrid plant dubbed spirit grain duckweed. This new flora combined duckweed's rampant reproductive speed with nutrient-dense thick root systems inherited from spirit grain grass. The male beast gorged itself relentlessly on the aquatic vegetation, its physique visibly bulkier and rounder around the midsection compared to its slimmer purchased form. Guhan stared at the oblivious male beast wallowing in the lake, a calculating grin spreading across his face. He arranged for the male six-winged beast to be paired with 20 additional hens, then input a sequence of instructions into his AI assistant. Deploy one hen into the male six-winged beast's habitat daily. Maintain constant activation of the forced genetic breeding ability within this zone. Prevent physical exhaustion in the male beast by implementing a rotational breeding schedule across the 21 hens over the next 42 days. Alternate breeding days with rest days for the specimen. Once the breeding rotation schedule for the male beast was finalized, Guhan tallied his current assets and instructed the AI to sort the six-winged chickens by sex. For females, and 8 males made up the hybrid flock. Guhan cordoned off an isolated enclosure to house the 4 female hybrids exclusively. From the 8 male chickens, he selected the largest specimen for a dedicated breeding regimen with additional hens. The remaining 7 male hybrids served no productive purpose and only consumed feed unnecessarily. They needed to be liquidated for funds as soon as possible. Guhan ruled out selling his creations on the Pinduoduo trading platform. While the platform hosted massive buyer traffic, it imposed strict regulations, costly virtual store fees, and mandatory official species quarantine certification. His lab-grown custom hybrid species could never pass the platform's official species database audit. Instead, he opened the Xinyu peer-to-peer marketplace, a chaotic trading hub exclusively for civilian vendors. This platform required 0 store registration fees and no official species documentation, enabling instant product listings with only a minimal commission deducted from completed transactions. Best of all sorts of obscure and rare goods were regularly traded here. So his six-winged chickens would merely register as an exotic oddity without drawing widespread suspicion or scrutiny. Guhan set the unit price at 300 credit points per chicken, then quickly drafted a product description. Novel lab-bred species for knowledgeable buyers only. 300 credit points each. Buyer covers teleport delivery fees. Price negotiable for bulk orders. Moments after posting the listing, notification chimes blared non-stop, with unread messages piling past 99. Guhan eagerly opened the inbox to browse buyer comments. Whoa, griffin-type exotic beast for only 300 credit points. Check your eyes, that's no griffin. Look at the plumage and claws. It's clearly some mutated poultry variant. Completed purchase, my family loved the meat quality. 3 pairs of wings plus 4 limbs. This has to be AI-generated imagery. I'll eat my handheld terminal live if these creatures are real. Just another seller chasing clout with fake listings, nothing to see here. Despite the flood of curious commentary, 0 actual orders appeared in his back-end dashboard. Shoppers were merely browsing for amusement, unwilling to commit purchases without official species validation from the platform, a glaring downside of unregulated civilian marketplaces. Glancing at his Divine Realm account balance dwindling to under 3,000 credit points, Guhan edited his listing price down to 100 credit points per specimen. The 7 hybrid chickens had been artificially matured overnight with negligible overall breeding costs amounting to barely 10 credit points total. He opted for discounted initial sales to let buyers sample the superior meat texture. Positive word of mouth would guarantee repeat customers in due time. After adjusting his listing, Guhan freshened up and left his residence. He had awakened his Divine Realm the previous day, and today marked official class placement day for university freshmen. Dongjiang University's freshman placement bulletin board was swarmed with students. Guhan weaved through the crowd and spotted his name at the bottom of the roster for Class 1, the elite honors section, posted on the first display board. Unfiltered murmurs washed over him from the surrounding onlookers. How did someone with only a C-ranked Divine Realm evaluation get placed into Class 1? Guhan, the guy with an absurdly large Divine Realm, but a worthless F-rank forced genetic breeding skill, right? I heard he ranked first in the citywide written exams, so the school admitted him via special dispensation into the elite class. A young man clad in branded combat gear rolled his eyes loudly. What's the point of book smarts for awakened realm bearers? Everyone knows his skill is only useful for breeding livestock, such a waste of a 700,000 square meter Divine Realm. His admission is nothing but a drain on the school's resources. Suppressed snickers rippled through the surrounding crowd. Zhao Su lingered beside Guhan while pretending to examine the bulletin, muttering deliberately loud enough for him to hear. What kind of status does he have to be grouped in the same class as me? Guhan shot a glance at Zhao Su and retorted casually. Funny you mention status. What sort of standing lets a person with a 250-point exam score land a spot in this elite class? Zhao Su's face flushed red with rage, and he spat irritably onto the pavement. He had attended the same senior high school as Guhan, scraping a mere 250 total exam points and relying on heavy family financial influence to secure university admission. He had awakened an A-rank combat skill called Berserk the previous day, fueling his overbearing arrogance. Ignoring Zhao Su entirely, Guhan cut through the crowd and headed toward the Class 1 classroom. Inside the room, freshmen chattered loudly, showing off the native creatures spawned within their divine realms and boasting about their planned developmental paths. The classroom doors suddenly swung open, silencing all chatter instantly. A pair of polished black boots stepped into the room, followed by an imposing female instructor with a youthful appearance, dressed in a sleek dark tactical jacket and neat cropped short hair. I am Qin Lin, your head instructor. She set a thick stack of student files down heavily on the lectern, pausing to glance directly at Guhan seated by the rear window. He was the sole C-rank student in the class, blessed with an exceptionally vast initial divine realm, yet burdened with a low-tier utility skill. The school administration had insisted on his enrollment purely for his top academic scores. Qin Lin refocused her gaze, resting both palms on the lectern as she surveyed the entire class. I have reviewed the Divine Realm development plans each of you submitted yesterday. I'm surprised to see the overwhelming majority of you opted for the warrior combat pathway. She paused for 2 seconds and let out a cold huff. Clearly none of you have experienced the harsh realities of this pursuit. Several front row students who had been preening with pride stiffened rigidly, holding their breaths. That said, I will not interfere with your chosen career paths. Qin Lin rapped her knuckles against the blackboard. In fact, I'm offering a challenge reward for anyone pursuing combat builds. A holographic projection screen descended from the ceiling, displaying a medium-sized beast covered in thick silver fur with razor-sharp claws, the giant honey badger, infamously nicknamed the Invincible Fighter. This creature is notoriously aggressive and unyielding, picking fights with any threat until one side perishes. Qin Lin activated a playback video showing the badger overpowering crocodiles and battling venomous pythons. If released into your newly established divine realms, this beast will attack every living organism indiscriminately, wreaking catastrophic damage to your realm's development. She adhered to her unique teaching methodology, using this vicious predator to hammer home the brutal hardships inherent to the warrior lifestyle for these sheltered, inexperienced students. For anyone who accepts the giant honey badger challenge, keeps their divine realm fauna alive through the encounter, and still commits to the warrior path afterward, She raised a single finger. I will personally award 10,000 credit points in cash. Additionally, I will file an application with the university to secure substantial special grants dedicated to warrior-type realm cultivation. A heavy silence hung over the classroom for 30 full seconds, broken only by collective gasps from the students. One student finally raised his hand and stood up. Professor, this challenge seems deliberately unwinnable. Even realm bearers with 1 full year of divine realm experience would hesitate to take this on. His outburst emboldened the rest of the class to voice their grievances in unison. This isn't fair. We only just awakened our divine realms with barely established native life forms. How are we supposed to fend off such a ferocious predator? Exactly. Even surviving a confrontation with a giant honey badger would cripple our cultivated battle creatures, which we invest immense effort into nurturing. Losing a single combat beast is devastating financially and practically. There's no benefit to taking this reckless risk. Zhao Su sat in the front row, twirling his electronic stylus with dismissive indifference. I have ample family wealth. I have no need for 10,000 credit points whatsoever. Qin Lin wore a knowing smile and said nothing. Truth be told, these privileged young men and women valued their initial species more than their own lives, and she had never expected anyone to actually take up this challenge. Her only goal was to douse the arrogance of these cocky freshmen and force them to face reality. There is nothing unfair about this. Qin Lin spoke in an even tone. You chose the warrior path. Moving forward, you will inevitably face foes far beyond your expected scope and witness your painstakingly nurtured divine realms get ravaged. Anyone who wishes to revise their divine realm blueprint and switch to the life support path may still do so. I will take another tally after class. A heavy silence fell over the classroom, with many students already having second thoughts. Guhan sat in the back corner, tuning out his classmates' complaints as he ran calculations through his mind. The reward was 10,000 universal credits with no spending restrictions, more than enough to cover his younger sister's university tuition, plus a sizable grant on top of it. For his current financial predicament, this sum was a much-needed lifeline. As for the threat posed by the giant mutated honey badger, it was no threat at all. The creature was a priceless asset to him. Guhan's eyes lit up as he stared at the photo of the beast. This variant was poorly suited for developing a divine realm ecosystem, meaning no merchants dealt in such specimens on the open market. Without further hesitation, he raised his hand high. Teacher, I volunteer for the challenge. His clear, crisp voice cut through the murmur filling the classroom, drawing every pair of eyes straight toward the back row. Beneath Qin Lin's stunned gaze, Guhan slowly rose to his feet. Can the creature be transported directly into my divine realm right now? Qin Lin brushed a strand of stray hair behind her ear, utterly baffled. This was the C-ranked student. Guhan, are you certain this is not a reckless joke? Her brows knitted tightly together as she clutched the species card, unwilling to hand it over immediately. This is no ordinary honey badger. It is a genetically modified variant. Fully grown individuals stretch 2 meters long, possess ferocious aggression and crushing jaw strength. Even if your divine realm is completely barren right now, once it builds a den within your territory, it will severely hinder your ability to introduce new species later on. I am fully certain, Guhan replied calmly. May I ask how large the accompanying grant will be? One beat of stunned silence blanketed the room before a buzz of chatter erupted. He must be desperate for money, risking his divine realm over cash. I remember his F-ranked ability is focused on biological reproduction. How on earth is he supposed to contain that honey badger? Zhao Su, seated in the front row, twisted around with a sneer dripping with sarcasm. Top student Gu, don't think your academic scores grant you free rein. You'd be better off switching to the life path to work logistics for families like mine in the future. He slammed his palm against the desk and laughed loudly. Do you really think your 70,000 square meter empty plane is large enough to corral that honey badger? Those beasts can maintain high-speed pursuits for dozens of kilometers straight. Guhan lifted his gaze, looking down on Zhao Su with a cold stare. Thanks for the reminder. I can handle this on my own. You, Zhao Su seethed at Guhan's complete immunity to his taunts. Qin Lin tightened her grip on the species card standing at the podium. She felt rather awkward. Her original plan was only to use this honey badger to humble the overconfident freshmen and dissuade them from sinking their funds into the costly warrior path. This tier of feral monster was too dangerous even for second-year students to introduce into their divine realms. Yet Guhan had stepped forward to accept the challenge. Guhan, you must understand the official rules. Qin Lin sighed, slamming the glowing card down on her desk. Our first class-wide assessment will be held in 7 days, which will also measure your Divine Realm Prosperity rating. If your score falls below 5.0, your challenge will be deemed a failure, and you will be expelled from Class 1 entirely. She tapped the blackboard to emphasize her warning. All Divine Realms start at a baseline prosperity rating of 3.0. A rank and B rank students can easily raise their score by 2 points within a week by purchasing premium species cards or fast-growing vegetation. The honey badger will only wreak havoc and drag your rating further downward. You still have time to back out. Guhan was well aware of all these risks. Prosperity ratings were calculated based on ecosystem diversity, total species population, and the evolutionary tier of all life forms within the realm. While every other student would avoid this honey badger like the plague, Guhan saw it as a top-tier gene bank dropped straight into his lap. I will not back out, Teacher Qin. Guhan walked up to the podium and took hold of the glowing resource card. Qin Lin watched his retreating figure and shook her head, convinced the boy had lost his rationality for the sake of money. The class bell rang soon afterward. As Guhan packed his belongings, Qin Lin called out from the podium. Guhan, come with me to my office. Qin Lin was the only person in the staff office. Have you truly thought this through? She leaned back against her chair. If you withdraw now, you only suffer a little embarrassment in front of the class, far better than watching your Divine Realms ecosystem get annihilated by that beast. Guhan held the card firmly in his grasp, his tone earnest. I mean every word. If I survive these 7 days, what is the minimum grant payout? Warrior Path applicants qualify for the most substantial government grants. Qin Lin softened her tone as she studied the young man before her. Clear the challenge while meeting the prosperity threshold, and your grant will start at a minimum of 300,000 universal credits. I will submit the application the instant your results are confirmed. 300,000 credits. Guhan's heart skipped a beat with excitement. I will deploy the honey badger right now. Without hesitation, he activated the card, sending the mutated beast into his divine realm. Qin Lin reached out to stop him, only to slump into resignation at his hasty action. She pulled up the instructor monitoring panel. Each honey badger was fitted with a vital sign tracker to deter student cheating. Young man, I hope you know what you're getting into, she said with a weary remark. Unknown to Qin Lin, Guhan had crafted a comprehensive plan long beforehand. Inside the divine realm space, a blinding flash of white light deposited the massive black and white predator onto the grasslands. The moment it landed, its powerful claws gouged deep craters into the soil, and it bared its rows of sharp fangs to unleash a deafening roar. Guhan activated his forced reproduction ability. He had prepped 50 domestic hens in advance to launch an intensive cross-species breeding program targeting the honey badger. Aided by his realm's intelligent management system, breeding cycles ran back to back with zero downtime, leaving the beast no window to recover its stamina between sessions. This ability was overwhelmingly overpowered. Any invasive creature entering his divine realm would be subjected to this non-stop accelerated breeding protocol. After leaving the office, Guhan spent another 1,000 credits purchasing a basic automated ecosystem maintenance package for his realm, letting the AI system steadily refine environmental stability on its own. University coursework took up very little of his schedule, with most of his time reserved for managing his divine realm. Instead of staying in the student dormitory, Guhan headed straight home. Once indoors, he pulled up the live feed of his divine realm. The once enraged honey badger now lay sprawled limply across the meadow. Its black and white fur was matted and dry, its jaw hanging slack with its tongue lolling out, gasping for shallow breaths. 50 rounds of uninterrupted cross-species breeding had completely drained the beast of its physical reserves. Guhan quickly relocated the weakened honey badger to the far edge of his divine realm, carving a 6-meter-wide river to fully isolate the creature. To prevent the specimen from perishing entirely, he tossed one hen into its enclosure to help it slowly recuperate. In its current exhausted state, the beast could barely stand upright, eliminating all risk of it swimming across the river to damage the surrounding ecosystem. With the honey badger contained, Guhan turned his attention to the 50 fertilized hens carrying the mutated honey badger genes. The hybrid offspring born from this pairing would undoubtedly possess formidable traits. Housing them alongside his 6-winged avians would create dangerous territorial conflicts, so strict isolation was mandatory. Guhan tripled the size of his original artificial lake. The spirit duckweed he had introduced earlier had multiplied wildly under the automated ecosystem system, blanketing most of the water surface in thick green foliage far beyond the local wildlife's consumption capacity. He constructed a small island at the lake's center and transferred all 50 fertilized hens onto the landmass. The surrounding water and dense duckweed formed a perfect natural barrier against escape. Across the open grasslands, more than 200 fully mature six-winged chickens wandered noisily about. The original male six-winged beast used as the primary breeding stock rested within a pile of hay, its once robust frame visibly emaciated from constant breeding duties. Feeling a twinge of sympathy, Guhan suspended its mandatory breeding rotation to grant the creature a period of rest. To his pleasant surprise, all 7 six-winged chickens he had listed on the peer-to-peer marketplace had sold out completely, accompanied by positive buyer feedback. Buyer Wind Chaser. These young griffins are incredibly lively. Attached to the comment was a photo of a six-winged chicken flapping its feathered appendages. Buyer Big Eater number 1. These birds have fantastic flavor. Dozens of users had flooded the comment section, splitting into 2 opposing camps. Are you out of your mind? Griffins are companion creatures, not livestock for consumption. Quit the edgy fantasy act. These are just mutated poultry. Why raise them if you're not going to harvest them? You have no clue what you're talking about. Properly bred variants can even serve as aerial mounts. Guhan chuckled at the heated debate. Customers were clearly divided between those who kept the avians as exotic pets and those who processed them for meat. This established a steady, reliable sales channel for his stock. After deducting platform fees, he netted over 600 credits from the batch. He quickly selected more than 100 male six-winged chickens from his realm and relist them under the label Wild Juvenile Griffins/Premium Edible Poultry at the fixed price of 100 credits apiece. All female specimens were retained to expand his breeding population long-term. His greatest pleasant surprise came from 6 white-plumed six-winged chicks birthed by the original female six-winged beast. These juveniles exhibited explosive growth rates. Sustained feeding on nutrient-rich spirit duckweed brought their bodies nearly up to the size of adult females, marking them ready for harvesting in the near future. 7 days slipped by in the blink of an eye. Inside the classroom of Dongjiang University's Elite Class 1, Guhan sat in the back row with a taut, tense expression. Zhao Su twisted around from his front row seat, raising his voice loud enough for the whole class to hear. Everyone take a look at Gu's miserable face. I'd wager his divine realm has been reduced to rubble by that honey badger ages ago. His followers immediately chimed in with jeers. It's a foregone conclusion. If he actually passes this challenge, I'll swim through a sewage tank. Once Teacher Qin runs the scan, his prosperity score will probably drop to 0. Mocking chatter rippled through the room, yet Guhan ignored every word, continuing to adjust the internal state of his divine realm. In a sense, his operation had teetered on total collapse, leaving him on edge even now. 7 days in the real world equated to 7 full years of time passing within his divine realm. The honey badger itself was not the source of his troubles. His 6-winged chicken breeding program had succeeded far too thoroughly. Over those 7 internal years, nearly 30,000 6-winged chickens had been bred and matured. Guhan had sold roughly 500 individuals via the trading platform, earning close to 50,000 credits in total. Unfortunately, buyer perception deviated sharply from his original plan. Despite him clearly labeling the birds as edible poultry, buyers uniformly treated the 6-winged chickens as exotic griffin companions rather than livestock. Low consumer demand for pet variants caused massive stockpiles to build up inside his realm. When he woke that morning, the sheer population of 6-winged chickens had overrun his habitat, rampaging freely and destabilizing the local ecosystem. Thankfully, the honey badger hunted the rogue birds as a food source, paired with controlled feeding of surplus chickens to the beast, which kept the population in check and prevented a complete ecological breakdown. He had immediately shut down his forced reproduction ability and rushed to implement emergency ecosystem repairs. Meanwhile, the 6 white feathered elite 6-winged beasts had fully matured during this period. Guhan had expanded the lake's central breeding island multiple times across the 7 in-realm years. The honey badger chicken hybrids inherited the honey badger's innate aggression and formidable combat prowess, alongside the extremely rapid growth rate of standard farm poultry. Their only weakness was atrophied wing structures that rendered flight impossible, paired with poor swimming capability, trapping the entire population permanently on the isolated lake island. The hybrid chickens existed in a constant state of conflict, either fighting rivals or traveling to initiate new skirmishes. Nearly 10,000 hybrid honey badger chickens had hatched on the island over 7 years. However, constant intraspecific combat and survival of the fittest culling drastically thinned their numbers. The island had essentially become a natural evolutionary crucible. Defeated individuals were consumed by the victors, leaving only the strongest contenders to continue the endless cycle of battle. Only 100 or so tough specimens remained, forged through countless life or death struggles. Though their body size matched ordinary farm chickens, most had lost the majority of their plumage, replaced by thick, durable dermal layers and razor-sharp talons. Each of the 100 hybrids had staked out its own exclusive territory across the island. Guhan attempted to list these hybrid birds on the marketplace, only to receive immediate negative reviews. The first buyer left an angry complaint demanding a full refund. The second buyer recounted an even worse experience. "What kind of creature did you sell me? I released it into my divine realm to feed my red-chained snakes, and it hunted and devoured my serpents instead. After selling just 2 specimens, all sales dried up entirely." These vicious hybrid creatures held zero market value whatsoever. The classroom bell rang, and head teacher Qin Lin stepped into the room on high heels, rapping her knuckles against the podium. "Everyone line up to complete your Divine Realm Ecosystem Prosperity Assessment." A hush fell over the classroom instantly. The students formed an orderly queue, stepping forward one by one to place a hand on the assessment scanner. Zhao Su, complete miniature volcanic landform construction, stable species population, fully established food web. Composite score, 7.8. Qin Lin nodded approvingly at the data on her screen. Zhao Su lifted his chin triumphantly and shot a taunting glare toward Guhan. The queue moved forward quickly. Nearly every student in Class 1 scored a 7.0 or higher. Eventually, it was Guhan's turn at the very end of the line. Every student craned their necks, eager to witness his humiliating failure. Guhan walked to the podium and rested his palm against the scanner surface. The progress bar on the screen spun rapidly. Beep. The final assessment data popped into view. Standard plain landform, limited species diversity, minimally functional food web, excessive concentration of a single species. Composite score, 5.9. Guhan's rigid shoulders relaxed visibly as he exhaled a long breath. He ranked dead last within the class, but he had narrowly cleared the minimum passing threshold to complete the challenge. Dead silence enveloped the entire classroom. Zhao Su's mocking smile froze on his face. He shot abruptly to his feet, pointing furiously at the display screen. "This is impossible. His divine realm should have collapsed completely. He cheated." Every other student wore stunned, disbelieving expressions. This outcome defied all logical expectation. Even Qin Lin was utterly shocked. Ignoring the students' uproar, she pulled up the honey badger's continuous vital sign monitoring graph via her instructor privileges. The fluctuating line graph left Qin Lin thoroughly dumbfounded. The honey badger had sustained repeated combat injuries, repeatedly slipping to critical health before slowly regenerating its vitality. The waveform pattern confirmed Guhan's native species had fended off the honey badger a minimum of 5 separate times. What baffled her most was why the honey badger was still alive instead of being killed outright. Qin Lin lifted her gaze, scrutinizing the slender young man standing before her. She burned with curiosity over how he had endured the honey badger's rampage for 7 days. "Teacher, does this mean my challenge is officially approved?" Guhan gestured toward the assessment screen. Qin Lin regained her composure, suppressing her shock and closing the data interface. "Guhan has not cheated. He has passed the challenge." A student in the crowd immediately called out teasingly. "Who claimed they'd swim in sewage if Gu succeeded?" All eyes swiveled toward Zhao Su and his group, sparking loud laughter throughout the room. Qin Lin paused, fixing a stern gaze on Guhan. "Your divine realm suffers from depleted species variety and an unhealthy ecosystem structure. While you pass this assessment, this developmental model is unsustainable long-term. I will ask you one final time. Are you certain you wish to continue along the warrior path? Even if you choose to switch tracks now, you will still receive your promised challenge reward." "I am completely certain," Guhan answered without the slightest hesitation. He had always intended to pursue the warrior path, and the grant funding was critical to his family's finances. Qin Lin frowned at his resolute demeanor. "Report to my office once class is dismissed." She tapped a few commands into her portable instructor device immediately afterward. Ding! A system notification chimed loudly from Guhan's personal terminal, audible to the entire classroom. Divine Realm account. 10,000 universal credits deposited. Every student watched enviously as Guhan collected the upfront reward payment right before their eyes. Inside the staff office afterward, "I need to know exactly how you contained that honey badger for 7 days. Faced with his teacher's questioning, Guhan had prepared a plausible explanation well in advance. It was straightforward enough. "I maintained a steady supply of poultry to feed the beast, which naturally curbed its destructive impulses. Qin Lin stared back with an expression of blatant skepticism, as if he were joking outright. While the strategy had theoretical merit, the giant honey badger possessed an insatiable appetite for meat. Sustaining it for 7 internal years would demand an astronomical quantity of poultry biomass. I am telling you the truth, Teacher Qin. Have you forgotten what my innate ability is? Your ability is biological reproduction, correct? Precisely. My ability accelerates reproductive cycles for all life within my divine realm. I purchased a batch of low-cost domestic hens and leveraged my ability to generate a surplus population far exceeding the beast's consumption needs. Qin Lin fell momentarily speechless. This unorthodox method explained the overwhelming concentration of poultry within his realm. It now made perfect sense why Gu Han had dared accept the seemingly suicidal challenge. His ability was far more powerful than the official ability ranking system had initially classified. Qin Lin massaged her temples with a weary sigh as she closed his student file. This technically complies with the challenge rules, yet relying on such exploitative loopholes will not carry you far, especially with the lowest assessment score in our class. I summoned you here primarily to discuss your grant eligibility. Warrior Path grants start at a floor of 300,000 credits, Qin Lin emphasized sharply. I can log this successful challenge into your official academic record, but Ministry of Education evaluators will conduct a formal combat capability assessment on your divine realm to determine your final grant tier. Gu Han locked onto the key detail instantly. A combat assessment? Correct. Evaluators assign grant funding tiers corresponding directly to your realm's overall combat strength. Qin Lin held his gaze, searching for signs of hesitation on his face. This assessment is inherently destructive. If your native life forms cannot withstand the standardized monster incursion deployed during testing, your food web will be torn apart, resulting in mass species die-offs. Her tone softened with earnest advice. Given your reproduction-focused ability, switching to the life support path remains the logical choice. This combat evaluation could permanently ruin your divine realm's ecosystem. Far from feeling intimidated by her warning, the corners of Gu Han's mouth tugged upward involuntarily. Does higher combat strength translate to a larger grant payout? Qin Lin rolled her eyes inwardly. The teenager was ignoring every word of her cautionary advice entirely. She resolved to stop wasting her breath. Some lessons could only be learned through first-hand hardship. As Qin Lin prepared to continue her paperwork, a sudden realization struck her. She slammed her palm against the desk abruptly. I see it now. You intentionally spared the honey badger to use it for the upcoming combat assessment. You're a calculating young man. Qin Lin pieced together the full scheme. The ministry's assessment used standardized monster incursion simulations. If Gu Han kept the aggressive honey badger alive within his realm, the evaluators' test monsters would engage in combat with the beast automatically. You planned this all along. Gu Han simply smiled silently, with no intention of clarifying his true motives. The honey badger would act as a convenient distraction to mask the full capabilities of his reproduction ability. No matter what hostile creatures the evaluators unleashed into his divine realm, every invader would become subject to his accelerated breeding protocol. Even so, his current ecosystem was undeniably a disorganized mess. External incursions were no longer a genuine threat, yet introducing new species would inevitably spawn a fresh set of logistical problems. Misusing his overpowered reproduction ability would quickly become his greatest vulnerability. Gu Han leaned forward slightly, framing his request carefully. Teacher Qin, could you help me acquire certain biological specimens through the school's educational resource archives? What underhanded plan are you hatching now? Reminded of his previous schemes, Qin Lin leaned backward with clear vigilance. Nothing illegal or restricted, and I won't ask for favors for free. I can reciprocate by accelerating gestation and reproductive rates for the life forms within your own divine realm. The words slipped out before Gu Han could catch himself, and the air in the office instantly turned stiff and awkward. He flushed bright red upon realizing how inappropriate the comment sounded when directed toward his young female instructor. Qin Lin stared at the flustered boy before bursting into soft laughter. What exactly are you looking to obtain? Gu Han quickly steered the conversation back on track. Fully mature iron banyan trees. Young adult specimens are sufficient. Iron banyans? What possible use do you have for those? Qin Lin looked thoroughly confused and launched into a brief explanation. An iron banyan requires 1,000,000 years to reach full maturity. A single tree can outlive dozens of successive divine realm owners. Though their wood possesses unique structural properties, their absurdly long growth cycle got them marked as obsolete for standard divine realm construction ages ago. Are you planning to keep one as a family heirloom? Guhan only cared about one critical detail. Does the school archive stock live iron banyan samples? We do. Several mature specimens were preserved for educational display when the university was founded. A single sapling costs 10,000 credits. Qin Lin rubbed her temples, worn out by Guhan's constant baffling behavior over the day. These trees held practical value, yet had no active market demand. Without hesitation, Gu Lin transferred the required payment. I'm simply conducting research into ancient arboreal species. One sapling will suffice. Thank you for your assistance, Teacher Qin. Right after the 10,000 credit points were credited to his account, he immediately spent all of them purchasing a discarded, obsolete tree. Qin Lin was utterly exasperated. This student was more stubborn than a mule and would not listen to any advice at all. Suit yourself. She quickly operated her faculty terminal, generated a species card, and handed it over. There you go. I've already tried to warn you. Don't bother offering to help me breed organisms anyway. I doubt your divine realm can withstand the consequences. Guhan took the species card without hesitation, muttered a word of thanks, and left straight away. To everyone else, the iron banyan's glacial growth cycle was a fatal flaw, yet it meant nothing to him. The iron banyan was currently the most ideal species to remedy the troubles plaguing his divine realm. Impervious to external damage and blessed with powerful self-repair capabilities, these trees grow to towering heights with densely interwoven branches, forming a natural biological barrier. Its lengthy maturation period posed no obstacle whatsoever. With his forced breeding ability, Guhan could cultivate hybrid variants with far superior attributes. He exited the office and halted at the corner on the second floor of the teaching building. Zhao Su leaned against the stair railing with his hands stuffed in his pockets, blocking Guhan's path. Move aside, Guhan said, unwilling to waste words. Quite the temper you've got. Zhao Su stood upright, raking his gaze up and down Guhan before letting out a cold snort. My dad told me to bring you home for dinner. If you don't want your father to lose his job, you'd better come with me. Guhan's brows knitted together at this blatant, outrageous threat. What exactly are you implying? His voice dropped to a low, frigid tone. Assuming Guhan had been intimidated, Zhao Su stepped forward with a smug grin. Nothing complicated. I casually mentioned to my father that you'd taken on Teacher Qin's assessment challenge. He was shocked to hear you weren't expelled from Class 1 and scraped a passing score. For some reason, he suddenly claimed he hadn't seen you in years and wanted you over for a meal to reconnect. Reconnect? Guhan sneered inwardly at the thought. Zhao Su's father, Zhao Kuan, had once been his father Gu Yanxiao's logistics assistant before striking it rich. After Gu Yanxiao suffered his downfall, he ended up working under Zhao Kuan's authority. Though the Zhao family had lent them minor support over the years, Guhan knew full well Zhao Kuan's kindness was never genuine. The two families had kept close contact during his childhood, and Zhao Su had once been his playmate. Their relationship soured once they enrolled in school. Ties between the households grew strained, and Zhao Su gradually turned hostile toward him. 7 tonight. Don't be late. Zhao Su tilted his chin upward arrogantly. With that, he shoulder-checked Guhan and swaggered downstairs. Guhan sent a text message to his mother Tang Yanran, then leaned back against the seat of the public transit bus. The bustling night scenery of Dongjiang County streaked backward rapidly outside the window. Ever since his divine realm was crippled years ago, Gu Yanxiao could only work as a low-ranking staff member under Zhao Kuan. The Gu family was still tens of thousands of credit points in debt to the Zhao household. There was no way to decline this dinner invitation. He had no choice but to attend reluctantly. The bus pulled up outside the fully mountain residence villa complex. Guhan walked along the tree-lined road toward the gated community, lined with 3-story standalone mansions, each fitted with private gardens. The electronic gate automatically unlocked as he reached the Zhao residence entrance. Zhao Kuan emerged from the villa to greet him with a genial smile, dressed in loose silk loungewear with a bulging paunch. Hans here. Come right in. No need to take off your shoes. He sighed loudly. I'm just giving Sue a scolding for not sending a driver to pick you up. Guhan rubbed his palms together and seated himself at the massive redwood dining table, putting on the awkward demeanor of a cash-strapped university student. Zhao Su sat opposite him, surprisingly refraining from sneering, only rolling his eyes and prodding the rice in his bowl with chopsticks. Uncle Zhao, what brings you to invite me for dinner today? Guhan probed cautiously. Zhao Kuan personally picked up the juice pitcher and filled Guhan's glass to the brim. Can't an old friend treat you to a meal without an ulterior motive? Make yourself at home. It's been years. You've grown into a fine young man. Your facial features are the spitting image of your father in his prime. Guhan forced an awkward smile and sipped the drink. Zhao Kun picked up a chunk of braised pork and placed it into Guhan's bowl. I heard you chose the warrior development path, just like my son, and you cleared Teacher Qin's honey badger trial? Zhao Kun raised his thumb in praise. A tiger father begets no cowardly cub. Your father was an extraordinary figure back in the day, and your current academic standing is top-tier material. Guhan kept his head lowered. You're overpraising me, Uncle Zhao. I barely scraped by thanks to pure luck. Luck had nothing to do with it. With your grades, you ought to tutor my son a little. Zhao Kun gestured toward Zhao Su with a look of weary disappointment. I've poured countless resources into boosting his divine realm, yet he still yields such mediocre results. I'm worn thin from worrying over him. These words made it crystal clear to Guhan why Zhao Su targeted him relentlessly at school. Zhao Su had undoubtedly endured endless comparisons to him from his father ever since they were small children. Zhao Su slammed his chopsticks against the table, unable to contain his anger any longer. Dad, why did you invite him here just to belittle me? Zhao Kuen's expression darkened instantly. Belittle you? Have you any right to complain? You always claim academic coursework is useless, yet look at your exam scores. You're nothing but an embarrassment to me. Zhao Su's face flushed bright red with rage. He only passed that trial by random chance. Chance. Zhao Kun struck the table's surface sharply. Guhan ranks first academically. His success in that trial stems from real capability, not luck. If I hadn't hired high-tier planners at exorbitant cost to design ecological blueprints for your divine realm, you would never have managed it on your own. Zhao Su's chest heaved violently as he gritted his teeth and fell silent. Do you plan to rely on me to fix every single mess you make for the rest of your life? Zhao Kun tapped the tabletop firmly. Guhan possesses real talent. You should learn from him. Caught in the middle of their argument, Guhan stepped in to defuse the tension. Uncle Zhao, Zhao Su boasts solid practical skills. He has plenty of room to grow in the future. Zhao Kun waved off his words, his tone softening the moment he turned back to Guhan. Han, pursuing the warrior path burns through funds at an alarming rate. Your father even came to my office recently, asking to draw an advance on his salary. Guhan's heart tightened. His father had stooped to begging Zhao Kun for money just to cover his tuition and divine realm supplies. Zhao Kun pulled a golden debit card from the pocket of his pajamas and slid it across the table toward Guhan. I can tell you're destined for great things. This card holds 500,000 credit points. Consider it my personal investment in your future prospects. 500,000 credit points. For the struggling Gu family, this sum was more than enough to pay off all outstanding debts to the Zhaos. Zhao Su shot to his feet abruptly. Dad, have you lost your mind? Why hand him this much money? Zhao Kun paid his son no heed, fixing his gaze steadily on Guhan. Guhan stared at the golden card, his mind racing rapidly. An investment? Zhao Kun ran a divine realm livelihood business and was a shrewd, calculating merchant who never conducted unprofitable transactions. If he accepted this money, he would be indebted to the Zhao family and effectively chained to their interests. One does not bite the hand that feeds you. He had no reason, nor any desire, to accept this sum. Guhan shook his head and pushed the card back across the table. I appreciate the gesture, Uncle Zhao, but I've already been approved for school grants. My first stipend has already been issued, and my finances are sufficient for my needs. Zhao Kun raised an eyebrow, surprised that this young man willing to risk the brutal honey badger trial for funding would turn down such a generous offer. Grants? Those petty sums are negligible at best. He leaned back against his chair. I grew up alongside your father. You'll soon learn how costly the warrior path truly is. Grant money won't even cover the bare minimum expenses. Guhan maintained a polite smile. I truly appreciate your kindness, but I must decline. Zhao Kun fell silent for several seconds before breaking into a slow chuckle. Very well, I admire your integrity. If taking direct cash troubles your conscience, I have an alternative arrangement. I have connections within the banking system that can secure you low interest, even interest-free loans with a starting cap of 3 million credit points. Principal repayments can be deferred for the first 2 years. 3 million interest-free credit points. Guhan could not deny the allure of such an offer. Zhao Kun piled on further incentives. Your academic performance is exceptional, and this is a critical developmental stage for your divine realm. Ample funding to lay a solid foundational ecosystem would let you surpass even your father's peak achievements. He lifted his wine glass. Your father would be immensely proud of your progress. We can keep this arrangement confidential. The final call is entirely yours. This carefully constructed sequence of offers was undeniably tempting. Most inexperienced youngsters fresh out of school would have agreed without a second thought. Even so, Guhan politely declined once more. Any form of financial aid from the Zhaos would bind him to their favors, leaving him permanently beholden to their family. He left the Zhao residence shortly after dinner under the pretext of needing to plan adjustments for his divine realm, rejecting their offer of a private chauffeur ride home. Inside the Zhao family study, Zhao Su voiced his frustration to his father. "You've always disliked the Gu family, so why go out of your way to fund him?" Zhao Kuan set down his corporate ledgers and glanced up at his son, his tone thick with disappointment. "I never had the comfortable advantages you enjoy growing up. Gu Yanxiao once wielded an S-tier skill, while I only possessed an E-tier ability. I still managed to climb above him in status, yet my own son cannot hold a candle to his child." Zhao Su was sick of hearing this repeated comparison. "Are you planning to adopt him as your heir with all this financial support?" Zhao Kuan chided him with an amused huff. "If you keep slacking off, I might seriously consider it. Let go of your petty grudges. I'm funding him solely to push him deeper into the warrior path. Once he realizes he lacks the aptitude for this career, it will already be far too late to backtrack." His father's explanation dawned on Zhao Su instantly. Guhan only possessed a lowly F-tier propagation skill. Walking the warrior path would be fraught with overwhelming hardships, forcing him to pour far more resources than ordinary practitioners. "So your funding is meant to let him sink deeper into financial obligations, dragging both himself and his father into ruin?" Zhao Kuan tapped the table to signal his son to sit. "You've only grasped half the truth. Direct suppression rarely works and often triggers defiance. Artificially elevating someone through false generosity, soft sabotage, is far more effective, all while keeping us out of direct conflict. But what if he actually succeeds with your funding? Won't that be even more infuriating for you?" Watching his son stubbornly argue back, Zhao Kuan spoke in a solemn, instructive tone. "Even if he ultimately rises to power, we gain a powerful ally instead of an enemy. We simply bide our time. One well-timed strike will send him crashing into total annihilation, just as he had done to Gu Yanxiao all those years ago." Still, Zhao Kuan chose not to reveal the full truth of the past incident to his son. In his eyes, the boy was far too immature, wearing every emotion plainly on his face with no trace of subtle scheming. Predictably, Zhao Su frowned and continued to question his father's logic. "He turned down your money just now. Wasn't all this effort for nothing?" He was visibly tempted by the offer. With that seed of desire planted, external lending institutions will reach out to him soon enough. A little behind-the-scenes maneuvering on my part will guarantee he takes on debt eventually. Never judge a situation solely by surface appearances. Zhao Kuan took the chance to lecture his son further, rambling on with additional lessons for a long while. On the late-night public transit bus, Guhan rested against the seat back and watched the neon cityscape rush past the windows. Zhao Kuan's proposal had stirred genuine temptation within him for a fleeting moment. The warrior path was notoriously capital-intensive. The moment a person awakens their divine realm, socioeconomic gaps are already firmly set in stone. Families like the Zhaos were merely upper-middle class within this county. Young heirs from prominent metropolitan clans are assigned top-tier ecological planners and massive capital injections the instant their divine realms manifest. A multi-million low-interest loan would exponentially accelerate the developmental pace of his own divine realm. Taking on loans was arguably one of the fastest avenues for underprivileged cultivators to climb upward. He pulled out his handheld terminal and opened the loan portals of major banks across Huaxia. After inputting his personal identification, divine realm rating, and skill tier, the system loaded for a lengthy period before displaying his approved credit limits, which made Guhan shake his head in resignation. The highest loan offer from any bank capped out at a mere 100,000 credit points, carrying an 18% annual interest rate. Interest rates for divine realm holders were exponentially higher than those applied to regular civilians. People born into poverty did not even qualify to borrow large sums of money to change their fate. Guhan closed his terminal, forcing the thought of Zhao Kuan's loan offer from his mind for the time being. When he returned home and pushed open the front door, the living room lamp remained lit. Gu Yanxiao and Tang Yinran sat on the worn sofa with the television volume turned down low. His younger sister was presumably studying in her bedroom. Both heads snapped toward the doorway the second he entered. "You're home." Tang Yinran stood to greet him and took his outerwear. "Did Boss Zhao give you any trouble?" Guhan slipped on his house slippers, keeping his tone relaxed. "Not at all. Uncle Zhao was very welcoming. He invited me for dinner, mainly to lecture Zhao Su on his poor academic performance after I claimed first place in the county exams. He had no intention of disclosing the full events of the evening to his parents. His father still worked under Zhao Kuan, and the family's tens of thousands in outstanding debt remained unpaid. He chose silence to preserve whatever peace the household currently had. Gu Yanxiao nodded and sighed heavily. Zhao Kun has always been frustrated with his son's lack of progress. Gu Han did not respond to the comment, tapping a few commands on his handheld device. A soft notification chime echoed through the room. Gu Yanxiao picked up his terminal, his eyes widening instantly as he shot to his feet. 10,000 credit points? Where did this money come from, Han? Did Zhao Kun hand you cash? Tang Yinran hurried over to peer at the screen, equally alarmed. Gu Han walked over to the water dispenser to fill a cup and drank slowly before answering. Not a cent from him. This is prize money I earned by winning a freshman challenge hosted by our faculty. Uncle Zhao only invited me for dinner because I outperformed his son in the assessment. Reading the sincerity in his son's gaze, Gu Yanxiao confirmed Gu Han was telling the truth. He waved his hands anxiously, swiping the screen to send the funds back. This money needs to go back to you immediately. You've just awakened your divine realm. Purchasing species specimens and nutritional feeds drains money constantly. We can manage household expenses fine on our own. Gu Han stepped forward and pressed his father's hand firmly against the terminal. Dad, keep this money safe. Set it aside for Xinin's tuition fees next year, so she can focus fully on her college entrance exams instead of picking up part-time jobs to help support the family. But your divine realm development. I have everything under control. Gu Han cut him off gently. I'll receive another grant disbursement once my divine realm evaluation is completed soon. I don't rely on this sum for my own needs. His parents exchanged a hesitant glance. Tang Yinran spoke up quietly. Han, what developmental path have you decided to pursue? Gu Yanxiao fixed his son with an anxious, waiting stare as well. Gu Han offered a casual laugh to brush off their worry. I'll most likely go down the livelihood development track. Relief washed over both parents at those words. Gu Yanxiao's rigid shoulders relaxed completely as he nodded repeatedly. The livelihood path is ideal. Peace and stability outweigh every other ambition. Your propagation skill is perfectly suited for breeding and raising organisms. He dropped the topic of the money and walked toward Gu Xinin's bedroom. Tang Yinran wore a relieved smile and urged Gu Han to wash up and rest for the night. After finishing his shower and locking his bedroom door, Gu Han laid back on his bed and closed his eyes, his consciousness instantly sinking into his divine realm space. With a single thought, the iron banyan species card dissolved into a streak of emerald light and landed on an empty stretch of land along the edge of the inland lake. In the next instant, a colossal banyan tree erupted skyward, bolstered by a thick, sturdy trunk and a sprawling canopy of dense foliage. Countless aerial roots dangled from its branches, rooting into the ground upon contact to form an interconnected forest under a single crown. What would happen if he placed animal and plant life together and triggered forced genetic fusion between them? This idea took root fiercely in his mind, impossible to suppress no matter how hard he tried. He withdrew his consciousness from the divine realm and opened the Pindao shopping platform, scrolling through the catalog for suitable organisms. Black thread python. Adults grow to 3 meters in length, non-venomous with powerful constricting force. Price, 10 credit points per specimen. Bloodsucker vine. Low-tier parasitic flora with rapid growth speed. Price, 5 credit points per plant. Gu Han placed an order without hesitation for 100 black thread pythons and 100 bloodsucker vines, spending a total of 1,500 credit points and leaving him with 37,000 credit points remaining. He scattered these organisms across various zones of his divine realm. Both species would effectively curb the unchecked population boom of the six-winged chickens without posing any existential threat to the evolved six-winged beasts. Gu Han rubbed his palms together to calm his rising excitement. He targeted the largest black thread python and the most vigorously growing bloodsucker vine within his realm. Forced genetic fusion. The moment his skill activated, a blinding beam of white light descended from the skies above the divine realm, enveloping both the python and the vine entirely. He proceeded to initiate a second round of fusion trials between the iron banyan tree and another bloodsucker vine specimen. Following these experiments, he purchased dozens more cost-effective common species, each carefully selected to construct a closed, balanced food web within his realm. This deliberate ecosystem layout eliminated the lengthy and natural evolutionary process required for ecological stability. Before he realized it, he had expended 30,000 credit points on these purchases. Morning sunlight seeped through the gaps in his bedroom curtains. Gu Han opened his eyes and immediately directed his awareness into his divine realm. Several of the dozens of foundational organisms he'd purchased the previous night with 30,000 credit points had already gone fully extinct within the space. Gu Han felt neither surprise nor regret over the loss. These casualties were a natural outcome of environmental filtering, proof those theoretical species combinations were incompatible with his realm's current conditions. Managing a divine realm was never a simple cycle of adding resources to fix deficiencies. Misguided trial and error would only create a bottomless money pit that drained the holder's credit reserves endlessly. A truly healthy ecosystem required core species capable of self-sustaining survival cycles, with auxiliary organisms functioning to regulate and balance the overall environment. Only once the realm's stability and environmental tolerance improved could new species be introduced without triggering sudden ecological collapse. Guhan shifted his focus to the hybrid life forms created from his fusion experiments the night before. The offspring born from the fusion of black thread python and bloodsucker vine manifested two entirely distinct evolutionary branches. He named the first variant vine snake, classified as a flora-fauna organism that blends plant and animal traits. This creature retained the bodily frame of a serpent, yet its outer skin was covered with vines and foliage. The nutrients absorbed by its plant tissues could never sustain the massive energy consumption of its animal physique. These creatures moved sluggishly and could no longer hunt prey effectively. No traces of them could be found anywhere, meaning they had long gone extinct. Such plant-animal hybrids were biologically unviable from the start. The second variant was dubbed serpent vine, classified as an animal-derived plant life form. Rooted deep within the soil, they outwardly appeared as dense clusters of tangled vines. Guhan observed that these serpent vines remained motionless for most of the time, drastically cutting down their energy expenditure. The moment chickens or other small creatures wandered within range, the seemingly inert vines would lash out violently. Using constriction tactics identical to snakes, they would bind their prey tightly before secreting digestive fluids to decompose the victim into nutritional matter, granting them an extremely high survival rate. They bore the physical form of flora, paired with the predatory instincts of fauna. Guhan stroked his chin, thoroughly satisfied with this outcome. Animal-derived plants eliminated the need for locomotion and conserved vast amounts of vitality. They thrived effortlessly via ambush predation, making them ideal for zoning his divine realm's ecosystem. For the following 3 days, aside from basic meals and rest, he poured all his energy into genetic hybridization experiments within the divine realm. Guhan constantly adjusted the sequencing and proportional ratios when crossbreeding black thread pythons, blood-sucking vines, and iron banyan trees. Countless trial subjects perished amid repeated failures. Finally, on the evening of the 3rd day, an entirely new species was born inside the divine realm. Guhan named it the iron serpent banyan. It inherited the ultra-short growth cycle of blood-sucking vines, the dynamic constriction capabilities of serpents, and would gradually develop the formidable defensive traits of iron banyan trees as it matured over time. The iron serpent banyan held little inherent aggression, possessing a docile temperament for the most part. Its branches swayed slowly akin to resting snakes, serving only as a mild deterrent to intruders. However, if its vines sustained persistent damage, the woody branches would constrict targets with the crushing force of a full-grown python to kill outright, then secrete digestive liquid to dissolve the corpse completely. This creation perfectly fulfilled Guhan's design requirements for a natural ecological dividing barrier. What reassured him further was data collected from multiple batches of tests. These artificially hybridized animal plants possessed zero capability for independent reproduction. Much like most interspecies animal hybrids found in nature, they were infertile. They produced no seeds and could not propagate themselves through root tillering. The only way to expand their population was for Guhan to utilize his forced propagation skill to breed new individuals manually. This meant the quantity and distribution of iron serpent banyans fell entirely under Guhan's absolute control. He need not fear them overrunning the ecosystem of his divine realm and turning against him the way the 6-winged chickens nearly had. Guhan immediately launched large-scale renovations across his divine realm. He spent an additional full day breeding over 1,000 iron serpent banyan specimens. A portion of these plants formed an enclosed secure breeding zone dedicated to housing his 6-winged beasts. Any creatures attempting to cross the boundary to attack the livestock would be intercepted and eliminated by the banyan vines. The livestock rearing crisis was now fully resolved. Just then, his handheld device vibrated, alerting him to an incoming trade message. It was the same buyer who had previously purchased one white-plumed 6-winged beast from him. These white-plumed 6-winged beasts required a decade of growth within the divine realm to reach full maturity. A few days prior, Guhan had listed them on the trading platform at a price of 1,500 application points apiece. Shop owner, the meat quality of your white plume six-winged beasts is nearly comparable to standard six-winged beasts. Do you have more stock available? Guhan replied, I have several remaining specimens. The buyer promptly sent a voice message belonging to a middle-aged man. I'm the procurement manager for Cloud Summit Fine Dining. Our restaurant will purchase all your current stock, and we will buy every batch you produce going forward. I'll raise the unit price to 2,000 credit points per beast. Guhan raised an eyebrow. A voluntary price hike? This seemed far too good to be true. What terms are attached? Guhan asked straightforwardly. It's simple. We complete the transaction privately off the official platform using off-book funds. You avoid platform commission fees, and our business gains cleaner bookkeeping records. A mutually beneficial arrangement. Guhan leaned back against his chair, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the desktop. Off-the-books private trades were a familiar tactic to him. Yet without the platform's official transaction guarantee, the buyer could withhold payment after receiving the creatures or tamper with the delivery coordinates during transmission. As an ordinary student with no influential backing, Guhan would have no viable recourse if things went wrong. Still, the 2,000 credit price tag paired with a long-term supply partnership was incredibly tempting, even with the substantial risks involved. The man claimed to work for Cloud Summit Fine Dining, a moderately large chain of upscale restaurants. But such an identity could easily be fabricated. Caution was paramount. Sorry, I'm not comfortable taking unnecessary risks, Guhan responded. I can deliver the goods through private transmission at your quoted price of 2,000 credit points. To keep things secure, I will list a virtual product priced at 2,000 credit points on the official platform. You complete the payment via the listing, and I will transmit the white plume six-winged beasts to your designated coordinates. I will cover all applicable platform fees myself. The buyer fell silent for a short while, clearly unprepared for the seller's extreme wariness. Very well, we will proceed under your conditions. I will send you a virtual delivery coordinate shortly. Guhan created a virtual commodity titled Advanced Ecological Consultation with a listed price of 10,000 credit points. Once the buyer completed payment, Guhan packaged his 5 remaining white plume six-winged beasts with a gift notation and dispatched the creatures to the provided virtual coordinate via a transmission token. After deducting the platform's 5% service charge, a net total of 9,500 credit points was added to his account balance. Staring at the updated balance, Guhan let out a slow breath of relief. Shortly after confirming receipt of the shipment, the buyer messaged again to inquire about the next available batch of mature beasts. Guhan remained guarded with his reply. A large new group will finish maturing soon, in roughly 2 weeks at the latest. I will reach out to you once they are ready for sale. The buyer sent back an OK emoji in response. Truly, efforts deliberately invested yielded little reward, while unplanned endeavors bore unexpected fruit. Guhan originally planned to earn steady income from mass selling his fast-growing six-winged chickens, yet the chickens ended up being traded primarily as exotic pets with stagnating sales volume. White Plume's six-winged beasts had a far longer growth cycle, and he had originally planned to halt their cultivation entirely, only to secure a permanent commercial buyer by pure chance. Making up his mind, Guhan spent 9,000 credit points to purchase 3 female six-winged beasts for breeding stock. His original rooster was already 10 years old. Keeping it for continuous breeding risked deteriorating its physical condition and producing inferior offspring. He acquired 1 younger male rooster to replace it and arranged controlled breeding between the specimens that very night. 1 week later, at the Divine Realm Combat Assessment Center, directly administered by the Ministry of Education in the Central District of Jiangxing City, the massive domed building was swarmed with crowds and lined with luxury vehicles outside its gates. Guhan followed his head teacher Qin Lin as he surveyed his surroundings. Another student named Chu Yu accompanied them. Chu Yu had achieved the highest Divine Realm Prosperity rating in their class and was one of the few students with an S-grade overall evaluation. Most participants here for today's assessment are enrolled at Jiangxing University. Qin Lin paused and turned to warn the 2 students. Don't put excessive pressure on yourselves. Just perform to the best of your ability. This applies especially to you, Guhan. Qin Lin fixed her gaze firmly on him. Combat assessments are no trivial matter. If you detect any signs of collapsing stability within your divine realm, press the forfeit button immediately. Do you understand? I understand, Teacher Qin. Guhan nodded in acknowledgement. Scholarship quotas for assessments of this caliber were extremely limited, and very few students from smaller county universities had been granted entry. Guhan would never have received this assessment spot if he had not accidentally accepted and completed the Honey Badger Survival Challenge. The majority of participants hailed from Jiangxing University, walking about with arrogant demeanors as they discussed the customized configurations of their personal divine realms. I heard Wang Tung raised a troop of rampant earth dragons inside his divine realm. Hardly impressive. Lin Chuxua built a genuine elven divine realm complete with functional magic towers. With that much financial backing, why even apply for scholarship funding? You don't get it. No one turns down extra credit points regardless of their wealth. Listening to the surrounding conversations, Guhan recognized the stark divide between students with financial support and those without. Affluent families could afford to nurture elven civilizations and construct magical infrastructures, well on track to spawning transcendent life forms and advancing toward demigod status before long. Guhan could only silently tally his own hidden assets, which paled drastically in comparison. His iron serpent banyans had not fully matured and could only function as crowd-control deterrents. His only viable combat assets were his honey badger chickens and the large alpha honey badger specimen. Eager to maximize his scholarship payout, Guhan resolved to deploy his honey badger chickens to their fullest combat potential during the assessment. The chickens engaged in constant infighting naturally and possessed short lifespans anyway. Attention, all examinees. The candidate roster for the Warrior Path assessment is now displayed on the central holographic screen. Please verify your personal information. A broadcast echoed across the plaza. The giant holographic display in the center flickered to life, scrolling through an extensive list of participant names. Every listed student held an S-grade evaluation, with several SS-grade candidates ranking at the top. Participants searched for their own names while exchanging mutual praise. When the roster scrolled down to the final entry, the entire plaza fell into a split second of dead silence. The quiet was instantly shattered by roaring laughter. Wait a second, am I seeing this right? There's a C-grade candidate listed here. Dongjiang University? Guhan. A C-grade overall rating. What is going on here? How did a C-grade student qualify for the Warrior Path assessment? Is there a system malfunction? Who is this person exactly? Did they get in through personal connections? Jeering remarks washed over Guhan in crashing waves. Shu Yu frowned and stepped a noticeable distance away from him, clearly embarrassed to be seen standing beside a C-grade participant. Qin Lin's expression turned awkward as well. She had submitted Guhan's application against official pressure after his victory in the Honey Badger Challenge. Guhan, however, remained completely unfazed with his hands tucked into his pockets, watching his name sit isolated at the bottom of the list with a quiet sense of detachment. While the comparison was far from perfect, this was precisely how he felt in the moment. Meanwhile, inside the monitoring room on the top floor of the assessment center, several chief examiners watched the live feeds while reviewing candidate files. The quality of this year's cohort is outstanding. A middle-aged balding examiner nodded approvingly. Over 30 new students across Jiangxing achieved S-grade or higher evaluations. Indeed, previous years only had around 20 such candidates, a second examiner agreed. Seated at the head of the table was Zhong Ran, a woman with long black hair dressed in formal military uniform. She scrolled through a tablet in her hands, her brows furrowed with confusion. Pull up the full profile for this Guhan. What circumstances led to his admission? Zhong Ran projected Guhan's file onto the main wall screen. An initial divine realm landmass of 700,000 square meters? That's a territory size reserved exclusively for S-grade candidates. How is his comprehensive evaluation only ranked C? The balding examiner glanced at the data and let out a scoff. Examine his innate skill set, sir. His sole skill is ranked F-grade forced propagation, dragging down his overall evaluation score drastically. An F-grade skill. Zhong Ran tapped her fingertips against the tabletop. Combat assessments carry a high risk of permanent divine realm damage. A candidate with a life support utility skill has volunteered to take on this high-risk evaluation. Pull his full records and explain how he secured entry. I've retrieved the relevant documents, ma'am. A young assistant beside her pulled up supplementary data, his tone gradually rising in surprise. Guhan achieved the top academic score across his entire county. He enrolled at Dongjiang University due to difficult family financial circumstances. During the teacher-assigned survival challenge, he housed a fully grown large honey badger within his divine realm for 7 consecutive days. Not only did his divine realm remain stable, its prosperity score still met the passing threshold. Silence blanketed the monitoring room for several heartbeats before muffled exclamations erupted from every examiner present. Everyone understood the immense difficulty of this feat. Even top-tier SSS grade students would struggle to complete such a survival challenge. Yet a C-grade student had pulled it off successfully. The balding examiner stared in shock. A fully mature large honey badger? That can't possibly be true. The assistant projected biological monitoring charts of the honey badger, originally uploaded by Qin Lin, onto the main screen. The bald examiner fell abruptly silent. All lingering doubts held by the monitoring staff were immediately dispelled by the hard empirical data displayed before them. A faint flicker of interest flashed across Zhong Ran's eyes. This young man is far more intriguing than expected. A crisp electronic announcement boomed across the vast assessment plaza once more. All examinees, proceed to your assigned numbered test pods and link your divine realm to the assessment terminal. To minimize depletion of your divine realm's foundational power source, this combat assessment adopts an invasion defense format. The system will deploy matching hostile creatures in successive waves, calibrated to the geographic terrain of each candidate's divine realm. Candidates who hold out against more invasion waves will receive higher potential ratings and tiered increases to their scholarship funding. A reminder to all participants to act within your limits. Immediately press the red forfeit button on your control panel to sever the connection if your Divine Realm ecosystem faces irreversible collapse. Per Divine Realm privacy regulations, the plaza's main screen will not broadcast live combat footage inside personal Divine Realms. Only real-time wave clearance tallies and kill statistics will be displayed publicly. Murmurs of relief spread through the queuing participants upon hearing the official rules. Guhan analyzed the framework silently to himself and nodded in approval. The rules were reasonably fair. Candidates who paid for specialized terrain such as volcanic zones, ocean landscapes, or floating islands would gain no unfair geographic advantages during the defense trials. He located Test Pod 39 designated for his use. Guhan. Head teacher Qin Lin walked over to deliver one final warning. Do not overexert yourself under any circumstances. Withdraw immediately at the first sign of trouble. Preserving your divine realm is far more important than scholarship money. Do not risk permanently damaging your realm's core for financial gain. Rest assured, Teacher Qin, I have a clear grasp of my limits. Guhan offered a faint smile before pulling open the pod hatch and lying down on the internal berth. He fastened the neural connection helmet over his head and closed his eyes. His vision faded to black before snapping back into clarity. Guhan's spiritual manifestation now hovered high above his divine realm. Spatial distortion rippled along the outer boundaries of his realm, and a glowing blue teleportation gate materialized out of thin air. An assessment system notification echoed inside his mind, confirming he could initiate the assessment whenever ready. Guhan wasted no time drafting complex battle formations. With a single thought, he locked onto his large sleeping honey badger and teleported it directly to a position less than 3 meters in front of the portal. Commence assessment. Guhan tapped the confirmation button firmly on his floating virtual interface. The portal flickered, releasing the first wave of invading creatures. A single red-eyed giant rat, larger than an adult house cat, poked its head out bearing sharp incisors. Before it could emit a single squeal, the large honey badger swiped a massive paw, seized the rat by its neck, and crunched down hard with its jaws, tearing half the rodent's skull clean off in one bite. First defense wave cleared. A 60-second countdown will begin before the next wave spawns. A 60-second waiting period was unnecessary. The honey badger would wander away long before the timer finished. Without hesitation, Guhan selected the option to skip the cooldown period and trigger the next wave instantly. The second wave arrived with 5 wild boars charging through the gate. The honey badger charged head-on, withstood the boar's tusk strikes, and clamped its jaws down to sever the alpha boar's windpipe. Skip waiting period. Wave 3, Wave 4, and every subsequent wave followed the same pattern. Guhan held the instant spawn button, pressed continuously. The early invading monsters were all low-tier creatures. Despite growing numbers, the honey badger's thick natural hide rendered the fights entirely one-sided massacres. After clearing 10 consecutive waves, a towering mound of monster corpses piled up directly before the teleport gate. The honey badger was fully enraged from the constant combat, scratching aggressively at the gate's edge with half its body protruding through the barrier while letting out furious low growls. Back outside within the plaza, the massive holographic board displayed a live real-time candidate leaderboard sorted by total cleared waves in descending order. Lin Xuxue claimed first place with 12 completed waves, followed by Wang Teng at 11 waves. Every top-ranked participant was a renowned elite student from prestigious universities across Jiangxing with official S-grade Divine Realm evaluations. At the absolute bottom of the board, the zero clearance value listed beside Guhan's name flickered faintly. The number then spiked erratically as if recovering from a system glitch, jumping rapidly from 1 to 5, 7, 9, before finally locking onto a value of 10. Guhan's name rocketed from the very bottom of the rankings straight into the top 10. He was placed ninth solely due to his low base evaluation score. The bustling chatter across the plaza cut off abruptly, enveloping the space in total silence. Is the assessment system malfunctioning? How did his score jump like that? He skipped every mandatory rest interval and forced each wave to spawn immediately without pause. How did this C-grade student surge into the top 10 rankings this quickly? His clearing speed has already overtaken most S-grade participants. Look, he's climbed up to 5th place now. Inside the assessment space, Guhan ordered his iron serpent banyans to form a defensive perimeter around the portal, preventing any stray invaders from bypassing the honey badger and penetrating deeper into his divine realm. The 20th invasion wave marked a critical difficulty spike. Over 30 armored gale wolves flooded out of the teleport gate in a tight coordinated pack. These wolves possessed muscular builds, lightning-fast movement speeds, and sophisticated pack hunting tactics with clear role division among group members. For all the honey badger's overwhelming brute strength, it could not fend off an entire coordinated pack alone. After slaying 4 wolves, the beast became encircled, worn down by hit-and-run harassment from the pack. 5 minutes later, the honey badger's stamina was fully depleted, its thick hide sliced open by multiple bleeding lacerations as it collapsed onto the ground, too exhausted to resist. Several wolves lunged forward to tear into its vulnerable body. Guhan planned to keep this prime honey badger specimen for future breeding purposes and could not afford to lose it here. He reacted instantly, his fingers flying across the virtual control panel. The more than 100 honey badger chickens housed on the central lake island of his divine realm were teleported as a collective unit. Precision dropped directly in front of the portal. The flock of battle-hardened chickens descended like a torrential rainstorm, crashing straight into the formation of wolves. The gale wolves were caught completely off guard. Before they could reorganize themselves to counterattack, the crazed chicken flocks swarmed their targets relentlessly. Guhan had deliberately withheld regular feedings from the chickens beforehand to amplify their ferocity. Ignoring all personal injury risks, the chickens dug their razor-sharp talons into the wolves' backs and beat their wings violently. No matter how the wolves twisted and rolled to shake them off, the chickens clung tenaciously, ripping flesh and fur from their bodies with unrelenting force. While the wolf pack was thrown into total disarray, Guhan teleported the injured honey badger back to its nesting grounds and sent several 6-winged chickens to feed it for rapid physical recovery. When he refocused on the battlefield before the portal, the conflict had devolved into a lopsided slaughter. The 100-plus honey badger chickens fought with unmatched ferocity, rendering the wolves' signature speed completely useless against overwhelming numerical superiority. In under 10 minutes, all 30 armored gale wolves lay dead beneath the chickens' talons. Trouble surfaced immediately after the last wolf perished. With no external enemies left to fight, the innate combative drive embedded within the honey badger chickens turned them against one another. The 2 largest roosters locked eyes, let out shrill squawks, and lunged toward each other in vicious pecking combat. Spurred by this confrontation, the entire flock erupted into a massive chaotic brawl among themselves. Dealing with mindless creatures is such a hassle. Guhan massaged his temples in exasperation. Creatures lacking rational intelligence had this fundamental flaw. They could not receive direct commands and would turn on their own kind the moment external threats disappeared. He could not allow such destructive internal conflict to deplete his flock unnecessarily. Guhan quickly activated the next invasion wave through the control panel. The portal flickered once again. The moment monsters from the 21st wave stepped through the barrier, the fighting chickens instantly halted their infighting in unison. Over 100 bloodshot eyes locked sharply onto the glowing gate without exception. The flock united seamlessly against external threats the second danger appeared. In an instant, the mass of black and white chickens surged forward as a unified tide, instantly engulfing the newly spawned invaders entirely. Guhan had fully learned to manage his volatile flock. He rested his finger permanently over the instant spawn trigger button. Whenever the chickens finished eliminating all foes and prepared to fight among themselves, he would immediately summon the next wave of enemies. As long as external threats existed, these chickens operated as a ruthless, unyielding meat grinder for his defense. Back out in front of the plaza screen, half an hour had passed since the assessment began. Every participating student and supervising teacher across the crowded plaza stood rigid as statues, craning their necks to stare fixedly at the giant floating display. The leaderboard rankings had been completely upended. Lin Shuxiue, who had dominated the rankings initially, was stuck at the 23rd wave with a warning red light signaling sustained damage to her divine realm, barely holding on to defend against incoming enemies. Wang Teng had voluntarily withdrawn after clearing the 20th wave, the threshold most participants chose to stop to avoid severe divine realm degradation. Nearly all examinees would forfeit the trial at the first sign of structural damage to their personal divine realms. Yet Guhan, the C-grade candidate universally dismissed as someone who snuck into the assessment through connections, now sat firmly in first place with glowing golden text marking his rank at the top of the board, paired with stark, eye-catching combat statistics. Damage detected across the divine realm. Current invasion wave, 32. Total confirmed kills, 953. Has he lost his mind? 32 waves in just half an hour? Did he stuff an entire night order inside his divine realm? I spent 500,000 credits buying Arrow Tower blueprints, and I only held out to the 19th wave. How can anyone believe he's merely a C-rated candidate? The crowd erupted into chaos, shouts and doubts filling the air. Chu Yu stood frozen, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She had just exited the evaluation with a result of 15 waves, feeling rather proud of herself, until she glanced upward and saw Guhan's statistics utterly dwarf her own achievements. Qin Lin swallowed hard, her palms slick with cold sweat. Guhan, how on earth did you pull this off? She quickly pulled up the vital signs monitor for the giant honey badger, only to find the beast had sustained nothing more than minor wounds and was already in the process of healing. Meanwhile, within the monitoring room atop the evaluation center, the atmosphere was oppressively heavy. Sir, these statistics are unquestionably anomalous. The balding examiner shot abruptly to his feet, jabbing a finger at the line graph displayed on the screen. 32 invasion waves place his overall combat power nearly on par with a first-order transcendent life form. Even with his tamed giant honey badger's formidable strength, its physical stamina could never endure such prolonged combat. Look at his elimination efficiency as well. A second examiner pulled up the detailed dataset, his voice trembling faintly. From the 20th wave onward, every invading force is wiped out in under 30 seconds upon breaching the barrier. No single creature could accomplish this. This is clearly the coordinated assault of a fully organized legion. Zhong Ran, seated at the head of the table, finally shifted her gaze forward. She straightened her posture, resting her interlaced fingers beneath her chin as she stared intently at Guhan's name glowing on the monitor. How could a C-rated divine realm, funded with no substantial capital investment, possibly host a disciplined military unit? Is the difficulty curve toned down for C-rated assessments? Zhong Ran asked after a moment's pause. A staff member in charge of calibration checked his terminal and relaxed slightly. Guhan's evaluation was run strictly under standard C-rated difficulty parameters. The other examiners breathed a collective sigh of relief. It stood to reason. The difficulty gap between C and S rank evaluations was astronomical, not to mention he possessed a fully grown giant honey badger as his primary combat asset. Yet he is still only C-rated, meaning these challenges should have pushed him to his limits. What's more, he's now enduring the 40th wave. Someone muttered this observation, reigniting the sense of awe hanging over the room. Is utilizing the honey badger as his main combat unit grounds for disqualification? I motioned to invalidate his score and mandate a retest with elevated difficulty. The bald examiner voiced his objection formally. His divine realm has already taken structural damage. Raising the difficulty would make a repeat attempt nearly impossible. That ruling would be grossly unfair to the student. Another examiner defended Guhan immediately. Arguments flared sharply between the two factions within the monitoring staff. He's nothing more than a C-rated student. His methods are unorthodox at best. A retest is necessary to preserve assessment integrity. The bald examiner declared solemnly. By that logic, every student who purchases combat species with personal funds should also face disciplinary action. Those students legally purchase their creatures, which count as legitimate combat assets. Do not conflate the two scenarios. Guhan raised and nurtured that giant honey badger within his divine realm, making it a core component of his fighting force. Could any of us replicate that feat, even with unlimited funds? Your remarks are irrelevant. I am judging this case objectively. Besides, C-rated candidates are not worthy of institutional investment. S-ranked students are produced in droves each year, and the Ministry of Education's scholarship budget is already stretched thin. Stretched thin? Then why do wealthy families flood these evaluations with their heirs? Talented underprivileged students cannot even qualify for basic financial aid to begin with. Enough! A sharp command rippled outward with imposing pressure, cutting the heated debate short. Zhong Ran fixed a stern gaze on the assembled examiners. I came here to observe the students' assessments, not mediate petty infighting. Take your grievances regarding flaws in the evaluation framework to private forums for discussion. I validate Guhan's official score. Adjust the parameters of the next incoming wave to S-rank difficulty. If he persists through the assault without surrendering, upgrade his scholarship benefits to the standard tier reserved for S-rated candidates. All in favor? Opposed? The 40th wave of invaders was finally eradicated. The area surrounding the teleport gate lay in ruins. Guhan had already transported most of the monster carcasses out of the zone. His army of honey badger fowl had been nearly wiped out after this grueling stretch of combat, with only 3 or 4 bloodied, badly injured specimens remaining standing. Is this truly my limit? Disappointment washed over Guhan. Across all 40 waves, the evaluation system had only spawned low-grade monsters. Even the more visually intimidating creatures boasted combat prowess inferior to his giant honey badger. The only encounter that had piqued his interest was a colossal golden scarab that emerged from the portal mid-assault. The beetle took flight the instant it materialized, soaring clean over the defensive line formed by his honey badger fowl and thorny vine banyan trees, heading straight for the central core of his divine realm. Guhan possessed no aerial defensive measures whatsoever. Without hesitation, he activated his innate ability, forced species propagation. The massive golden scarab plummeted from the sky immediately, trapped within the divine realm and compelled to crossbreed with the native plant life. Guhan had originally planned to exploit the assessment trials to capture valuable exotic species for free. One final wave. Let's hope something worthwhile spawns. He pressed the activation button for the 41st wave without delay. The teleport gateway expanded drastically, its pale blue hue bleeding into a deep crimson red. 3 towering figures stepped out from within the portal. Standing 2 meters tall with corded, rippling muscle and rough gray-green skin, the lead orc wielded a crude iron tower shield, while the 2 figures trailing behind him carried recurve bows. Guhan's breathing grew heavy with excitement. Finally, intelligent life forms capable of ascending into transcendent beings. A fully mature orc fetched nearly 500,000 universal credits on the open market, only 50,000 less than baseline human specimens. The Ministry of Defense had finally splurged on high-tier opponents. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 wooden arrows streaked forward, piercing the skulls of the last surviving wounded honey badger fowl in a single strike. The shield-bearing orc roared loudly, slamming its iron shield against a young thorny vine banyan blocking its path. A sharp cracking sound echoed as the tree's trunk split open under the blow. The orcs tore through his defensive formations with brutal ease, advancing unimpeded toward the heart of his divine realm. Instead of feeling panic at the breach, Guhan's eyes locked firmly onto the 3 orc raiders, his heartbeat accelerating as he studied the 2 archers closely. 2 females, 1 male. Guhan did not hesitate, channeling his ability toward the figures below. Forced species propagation activated. Targets selected: the male shield orc and the left female archer orc. The moment the skill took effect, both orcs stiffened. Their ferocious snarls faded into blank stupor, their weapons clattering onto the ground. The male orc turned to cradle the female, settling onto the ground beside her. The remaining female orc stared on in utter bewilderment. Guhan swiftly recalibrated his ability targets. New targets: the surviving female orc archer, paired with the captured colossal golden scarab. The orc's bow slipped from her grasp as well, and she sprinted frantically toward the scarab's location, pulled by an irresistible biological urge toward the creature. Target secured. Acting with lightning speed, Guhan tapped the panel to initiate the subsequent wave before the ongoing propagation effects could finish resolving. The portal flickered once more, unleashing 10 fully armed orc warriors howling into the battlefield. The second they stepped through the barrier, Guhan slammed down the termination button without a shred of hesitation. Assessment terminated. The 10 newly spawned orcs froze mid-charge, their bodies torn apart by an unstoppable gravitational pull, their essence streaming back into the teleport gateway to be reabsorbed. Meanwhile, the 3 orcs and golden scarab enveloped in the white light of his ability remained completely unaffected as the portal slowly faded out of existence. The assessment officially concluded. Guhan exhaled deeply, wiping beads of sweat from his forehead. He knew when to cut his losses. His honey badger fowl were extinct, and the thorny vine banyans could no longer hold back orc forces. If he had not ended the trial immediately, the 10 fresh orc combatants would have overwhelmed his territory. While he could have neutralized them with his ability, drawing consistent zero-kill counts would inevitably spark deep suspicion from the examiners and expose his unique power. Walking away with 3 orcs and a rare giant golden scarab was an overwhelming net gain. Silence blanketed the crowd gathered before the large public screen outside the evaluation center. Every head tilted upward to stare at the newly updated leaderboard occupying the topmost position. First place, Guhan Wave survived. 41 total kills. 10-12. Second place, Lin Shushua Wave survived. 32 total kills. For 93. Third place, Tang Jichao Wave survived. 30 total kills. 485. Are you kidding me? Someone shouted out amid the stunned crowd. Pandemonium erupted across the venue instantly. This has to be a system malfunction. How could a low-ranked C-rated student claim first place? Over 1,000 monster kills? Does he keep some kind of colossal apex predator sealed inside his divine realm? Qin Lin, the supervising instructor, stood rooted to the spot, staring at the rankings in complete disbelief. Chu Yu stood at the front of the crowd, her face pale as she bit down hard on her lip. She had S-rated divine realm evaluation and failed to crack top 10, yet Guhan had secured absolute first place. Everyone quiet down. A young man wearing glasses called out loudly, pushing his frames up the bridge of his nose with an air of certainty. Recall core rules of this assessment. Invading monsters scale in strength directly with candidates' divine realm rating. Every person within earshot swiveled to face him. The bespectacled student continued his analysis. S-rated candidates face far stronger invasive life forms. Guhan is only C-rated. System would only spawn basic low-tier creatures against him, with quantity being sole difference. A murmur of realization rippled through crowd after this explanation, reinforced by stark contrast in kill tally's board. Right? How powerful could C-rank dungeon monsters possibly be? I nearly had a heart attack thinking he was hiding his true strength all along. He just exploited a loophole in the assessment scaling system. Anyone with halfway competent creatures in their divine realm could hold out for dozens of waves under C-rank parameters. 41 waves is impressive for a C-rated candidate, nothing more. He must have sacrificed most of his divine realm's structural integrity to pull this off with nothing left to lose. The crowd comforted themselves with this reasoning, easing the sharp sense of inferiority triggered by Guhan's outstanding performance, writing his success off as a product of his low evaluation tier. A soft hiss signaled the opening of Guhan's assessment pod. He stretched his stiff neck as he stepped out, immediately registering every pair of eyes in the venue locked onto his figure. Following their collective gaze upward, he spotted his name blazing bright red in first place on the holographic display. A silent curse ran through Guhan's mind. This was far worse than he anticipated. He only planned to rank moderately high, not claim the top spot outright. His secret ability was now at severe risk of being uncovered. His mind raced rapidly to formulate a believable cover story. Even Lin Shushua, the SS-ranked genius who commanded an elf-based divine realm, turned to study him with evident curiosity. She had damaged her own divine realm to endure 32 waves and had assumed first place was guaranteed, never expecting a C-rated participant to outrank her. Uncomfortable under the collective scrutiny, Guhan lowered his head and feigned physical exhaustion, hurrying over to Qin Lin's side with unsteady steps. Professor Qin, I'm feeling extremely lightheaded. My divine realm was on the verge of total collapse. He pressed a palm to his forehead to sell the act. Qin Lin was swamped with unanswered questions, yet rushed forward to steady him at his words. Why persist until your divine realm sustained critical damage just for scholarship funding? Do you intend to ruin the long-term viability of your domain entirely? Guhan bowed his head submissively. You're correct to reprimand me, ma'am. Every last one of my honey badger fowl perished holding the defensive line. Several students eavesdropping nearby let out scoffs, yet none could deny Guhan displayed remarkable tactical skill regardless. Back inside the top-floor monitoring room, the atmosphere stood in stark contrast to the noisy hall below. Examiners stood clustered together in complete silence before the data screens. All the external attendees attributed Guhan's success to the lower difficulty of C-rated trials, but the confidential internal dataset told a far different story. Candidate: Guhan Wave 41 Invasion Difficulty, manually upgraded to S-rank invading units. Orc Tactical Squad Official Verdict: invading squad not retrieved by system candidate cleared the wave successfully. A middle-aged examiner swallowed hard, gesturing toward the text on the screen with a dry throat. Captain Zhong, how should we classify this result? He cleared the wave. The score stands valid. Zhong Ran replied with a faint, unconcerned smile. A second examiner hurriedly pulled up the back-end activity logs. The system officially marks Wave 41 as cleared, yet we see 0 registered kills during Wave 37 and Wave 41 entirely. Bafflement spread across every examiner's face. No such data discrepancy had ever been recorded in the assessment's history. Could the terminal have glitched after we manually altered the difficulty mid-trial? We have no definitive explanation. No precedent exists for this anomaly. Zhong Ran smiled faintly once more, unfazed by the irregular logs. That is an issue for your technical team to resolve. She leaned back against her chair. Elevate this student's scholarship to S-rank benefits. Have him brought to my office afterward. I am genuinely curious how he managed this feat. The examiners exchanged uneasy glances but dared not voice any opposition. Zhong Ran was the primary financial sponsor funding the entire scholarship program. The commotion in the main hall gradually died down. The chief assessment official walked onto the stage holding a roster, clearing his throat to capture the crowd's attention. Silence. Multiple participants delivered exceptional performances in this round of evaluations. Approved scholarship stipends will be deposited into personal accounts within 3 business days. The official scanned the assembly, pausing noticeably when his gaze landed directly on Gu Han. These scholarship funds are privately sponsored by Colonel Zhong Ran of the National Defense Army. All credits are designated restricted funding, exclusively usable for purchasing developmental supplies for your divine realms. I urge every student to dedicate yourselves to growth and honor the resources the nation invests in your development. He proceeded to recite the standard military recruitment provisions, with every student and faculty member listening quietly. Once the formal announcements concluded, Gu Han queued up to swipe his identification card at the terminal, registering his bank account for the scholarship transfer before checking his updated funding tier. Text appeared across the display screen instantly. Candidate, Gu Han Divine Realm Rating. C rank assessment ranking. First place scholarship tier. S rank 2 million restricted universal credits. Gu Han's breath hitched sharply as he stared at the long string of zeros on the screen. 2 million credits. He had only expected 50,000 credits at most for an A or B rank stipend. This reward dwarfed all his original expectations by a massive margin. Several students craning their necks to peek at his screen gasped aloud in shock. 2 million credits? What justification exists for giving that to a C-rated student? He receives 80,000 more credits than I do, and I hold an official S-rank rating. An S-ranked candidate voiced his frustration openly. Maintain order. Qin Lin stepped forward to glare at the complaining students before turning to Gu Han with a complicated expression. A sharply dressed female military officer stood directly behind her, nodding politely toward Gu Han and gesturing for him to follow. Student Gu Han, Captain Zhong requests an audience with you. Gu Han's heart sank. Free 2 million credits never came without strings attached, and the moment he dreaded had finally arrived. He closed the terminal interface and trailed the military officer toward the top floor with a composed exterior, his mind working overtime to refine his fabricated explanation. Claiming first place while only holding a C-rated divine realm drew far too much scrutiny. Without a watertight alibi, his unique ability would inevitably be exposed. If his power became public knowledge, he would almost certainly be conscripted by national authorities at minimum. He risked being confined to research facilities to artificially breed powerful creatures for state use, living a life with guaranteed material comfort, yet zero personal freedom. That was a future Gu Han refused to accept under any circumstances. He acknowledged his recklessness in pushing for maximum rewards this trial, yet his starting resources were abysmally scarce compared to wealthy peers with inherited, well-developed divine realms. Securing these funds was his only viable path to gather the basic materials needed to upgrade his domain. His giant honey badger was an overpowered brute force unit in the early stages of development, relying purely on physical prowess. As rival students cultivated intelligent species capable of tool use, civilization advancement, and transcendent evolution, the honey badger's raw physical strength would grow increasingly obsolete. Gritting his teeth, Gu Han finalized every detail of his prepared cover story as they reached the office door. The military officer pushed the door open and motioned for Gu Han to enter. The spacious room only held one figure standing before the floor-to-ceiling windows. The officer lowered her voice to introduce the occupant. This is Colonel Zhong Ran of the National Defense Army, a 4th-tier divine being. Gu Han's breath caught in his throat. He snapped to attention and offered a crisp formal salute. Ma'am, it is an honor to meet you. He had never encountered a fourth-tier divine being before, entities blessed with a natural lifespan spanning 2,000 years. Guhan stole a quick glance as Zhong Ran turned toward him. She appeared no older than her early 20s, clad in a sleek black combat uniform, radiating the sharp resolve forged from years of frontline military service. Relax and take a seat. Zhong Ran gestured toward the sofa across from her. Guhan sat upright with rigid posture. Zhong Ran settled into the opposing seat and studied him intently. I have reviewed your full file. F grade innate ability. Forced species propagation. Initial divine realm territory spanning 700,000 square meters. Rated C class upon evaluation. She paused, her tone laced with clear curiosity. What motivated you to select the warlord developmental path for your domain? Guhan met her gaze steadily to mask his inner tension. The strengths of my innate ability are reason enough. Oh, Zhong Ran arched an eyebrow. Elaborate for me. My propagation ability drastically accelerates species reproduction rates, generating massive population pools to sustain constant wartime casualties on the battlefield. Zhong Ran wore a faint amused smile. A logical framework. So you overwhelmed the invasion waves through sheer numerical superiority during this assessment. That is correct. Guhan nodded, launching into his rehearsed explanation. I possess a giant honey badger within my realm. Prior to the assessment, I restructured the terrain surrounding the spawn portal into wetland marshland and bred dense clusters of venomous thorn plants across the perimeter. He watched Zhong Ran's subtle reactions as he spoke. The honey badger possesses thick, toxin-resistant skin unaffected by the thorns. Invading monsters become mired within the marsh. Their movement severely hampered while the thorn flora poisons and paralyzes them over time. Zhong Ran nodded thoughtfully once he finished recounting the strategy. Using terrain hazards and native flora to weaken foes before the honey badger eliminated stragglers was a clever, resource-efficient tactic. That plausibly explained how a C-rated domain could withstand dozens of assault waves. While this strategy could only neutralize low-tier threats and was completely ineffective against high-grade monsters or aerial units, it was a near-perfect tactic for entry-level assessment trials. As for the odd back-end data logs, the examiners had manually modified assessment difficulty mid-operation, making system lag or partial data loss a reasonable, easy-to-believe excuse for the inconsistencies. Zhong Ran chose not to dig deeper into the anomalies. Every cultivator was entitled to their own hidden trump cards and secrets. The National Defense Army only intervened against practitioners engaging in illegal cult activity or dangerous anti-human practices, otherwise encouraging independent student development. You possess sharp tactical acumen, Zhong Ran praised him gently. Learning to leverage environmental geography and creature traits for synergistic combat puts you far ahead of peers who merely pour endless capital into brute force upgrades. Guhan breathed a quiet sigh of relief, thinking he had successfully covered up the truth. Still, I need to teach you knowledge you will never find in textbooks. Zhong Ran shifted her tone abruptly, her expression growing stern. Guhan sat up straighter at once. Please enlighten me, Colonel. Numerical superiority can indeed grant you temporary advantages in confrontations. Yet you must understand this. Even though transcendent beings can bear offspring endowed with supernatural traits, their reproductive efficiency drastically declines as their existential rank elevates. Furthermore, once sapient species develop self-awareness and build civilizations, they will no longer obey their deities' edicts unconditionally. Driven by personal desires, fears, and rational calculations, they will carve out their own paths. She fixed her gaze firmly on Guhan and spoke with solemn gravity. At that stage, your reproductive manipulation ability will lose much of its utility. Forced intervention into the reproduction of intelligent races may even spark uprisings across your divine realm and trigger a total collapse of their faith in you. Guhan listened with full concentration. These were critical lessons no classroom lecture could offer. That explains why nearly all ability users with reproduction-focused skills opt for civilian research careers, cultivating mindless creatures for meat production or medicinal ingredients. Guhan fully grasped her underlying message. The stronger a creature was, the harder it was for them to multiply. The smarter a species became, the harder they were to govern. But his power operated by different rules. No matter what transcendent properties a life form possessed, any target locked by his skill would inevitably produce descendants under his guidance. Thank you for your guidance, Colonel. I will carefully plan my future developmental trajectory. Guhan replied earnestly with a bow. Zhong Ran stood and clapped her hands lightly. That covers all I needed to say. Here are the 2 million credit points of your scholarship. Manage the funds wisely and do not disappoint my expectations. Should you ever wish to enlist in the National Defense Force in the future, my door is always open. Guhan had not anticipated such a generous scholarship grant, clearly a token of the colonel's high regard for him. He saluted sharply once more. Understood. My deepest gratitude, Colonel. He turned to leave, his hand brushing against the doorknob when her voice halted him in his tracks. Wait a moment. Guhan stiffened, cold sweat instantly prickling across his back. He twisted around, forcing a calm demeanor onto his face. Do you have further instructions, Colonel? Zhong Ran traced a faint arc through the empty air with her fingertip, revealing a glowing, translucent card held between her fingers. Claiming first place deserves more than just scholarship money. I would look far too stingy as your patron otherwise. I have no precious treasures to offer you, so take these spirit-awakening flowers I used in the early days when I first built my divine realm. Their fragrance blankets 100 square meters and awakens latent intelligence in all nearby wildlife. They serve no purpose for me any longer, so consider this your victory reward. Guhan froze for a second before hurrying forward to receive the species card with both hands. Spirit Awakening Flowers, a Grade D divine botanical species. He had studied them in textbooks. All plants bearing supernatural capabilities were classified as divine flora. These rare specimens directly boosted the cognitive capacity of creatures dwelling within a divine realm. A single flower fetched a starting auction bid of over 100,000 credit points on the open market, and viable stock was perpetually scarce. Truly, high-ranking officials possessed unimaginable resources. Trifling cast-offs from their collections were enough for ordinary people to strive decades to afford. Thank you immensely, Colonel. Guhan tucked the card securely away, unable to suppress a wide grin. A soft chuckle escaped Zhong Ran at his obvious excitement. If you ever apply for service with National Defense, just mention my name during registration. Guhan's eyes lit up. Had he successfully secured a powerful patron? His joy faded instantly when Zhong Ran added slowly. Mentioning my name will get you assigned to intensified training regiments. His smile froze stiff on his face. Intensive training? He had naturally assumed her endorsement would bring special treatment and prioritized resource allocation. Understood. I appreciate your cultivation, Colonel. He still voiced his thanks loudly and respectfully. You may leave now. Zhong Ran waved him off. Guhan saluted once again and strode quickly out of the office. The room fell silent once the door clicked shut. Zhong Ran leaned back against her sofa and sipped water from her mug. She had acted purely on a whim today. This young man came from an ordinary household, commanded an initial divine realm of only 700,000 square meters, and wielded an F-tier reproductive skill with zero combat potential. It was remarkable that he had passed the assessment relying solely on his wit and clever tactical ploys. His strategy leveraging giant honey badgers to game the evaluation would grow less effective in advanced trials, and he would most likely fade into obscurity like countless other low-tier ability users. Still, there was always a slim chance he could rise to greater heights. Young people held boundless potential. Discarding these obsolete spirit-awakening flowers cost her nothing, and this small gesture built a favorable connection between them. Once Guhan confirmed he was unobserved in the corridor, he closed his eyes and projected his consciousness directly into his divine realm. Lush vitality still permeated every corner of the domain, though large swathes of land bore the scars of recent combat. 3 orcs alongside a giant golden beetle remained locked in a brutal battle against the thorny vine banyan trees. Guhan assigned controlled breeding protocols to the male orc and giant golden beetle respectively, then activated the Spirit Awakening Flower species card he had just received. The card dissolved into stardust, materializing 7 massive flora specimens on an empty stretch of land within his realm. Guhan widened his eyes as he inspected these so-called flowers. They bore no resemblance to the delicate, crystal-petaled specimens illustrated in his textbooks. Their thick trunk-like roots were etched with concentric grain patterns reminiscent of ancient trees. Fleshy, succulent petals of deep indigo black clustered atop each stalk, releasing a rich, exotic aroma into the air. They look far more rugged than standard specimens. Guhan scratched his head in confusion. Commercial Spirit Awakening flowers never grew to such colossal sizes. Collectively, these 7 blooms rivaled a full-sized sedan in volume. He connected his handheld terminal to his divine realm and activated its analytical assistant to pull up precise specimen data. Scan newly introduced species. The terminal screen flickered, and its progress bar filled rapidly. Species name, Mutated Spirit Awakening Flower. Age, 100,000 years of internal divine realm time. Effect: high probability of elevating the intelligence of all organisms within a 100-meter radius. 100,000 years, paired with a drastically improved success rate for cognitive awakening. These mutated specimens easily qualified as Grade C divine plants, far surpassing ordinary variants. Guhan swallowed hard in shock. 100,000 days of divine realm time, translated to real-world years via a fixed time dilation ratio. With 365 days per calendar year, 100,000 days equaled roughly 274 real-world years. A sharp gasp escaped his lips. By this calculation, Colonel Zhong Ran, who appeared no older than her early 20s, was at minimum 200 to 300 years old. The lifespan ceiling for fourth-tier divinities stretched to 2,000 years, so her age was considered youthful for her rank. Back inside the military office, Zhong Ran was sorting through the batch of candidate files when her fingers halted mid-air. She bolted upright from her relaxed slouch, eyes blown wide with sudden alarm as memories of the gifted flowers rushed back to her mind. She had planted those spirit-awakening flowers shortly after awakening her divine realm. As her domain expanded and her native species underwent countless evolutionary iterations, that patch of flowers had been abandoned and left untouched for centuries. She had only sealed them into the species card during a recent inventory cleanup. Damn it, I just exposed my true age. Zhong Ran slammed her palm against her desk hard enough to slosh water out of her drinking cup. She had completely overlooked that critical detail while presenting the gift to Guhan. Guhan refocused his attention on the 7 towering mutated spirit awakening flowers. At their age and potency, they would spark fierce bidding wars if put up for public sale, easily selling for 400 to 500,000 credit points per individual bloom. Without hesitation, Guhan applied his mandatory reproductive skill to the 7 flowers and the wild weeds surrounding them. Several minutes passed before glowing energy clouds dissipated, revealing purple sprouts breaking through the soil beside each flower cluster. He spent a full hour crossbreeding the mutated spirit awakening flowers with various fast-growing local vegetation native to his divine realm. By the end of his work, a diverse expanse of spirit-infused plant life carpeted the ground surrounding the original 7 blooms, including purple weeds, fragrant climbing vines, and low-growing shrubs with thick nutrient-rich foliage. A fresh terminal scan confirmed every hybrid variant carried a minor spirit awakening aura capable of boosting nearby creatures' mental faculties. While their potency could not match the original mutated flowers, even this diluted effect suited Guhan's plans perfectly. A soft breeze swept across the divine realm, scattering the hybrid seeds across every region of his 700,000 square meter territory. Thanks to accelerated temporal flow inside the domain, the entire landmass would soon be blanketed by these intelligence-enhancing plants. He would then organize purebred breeding cycles for the original spirit awakening flowers to cultivate saplings he could trade for external resources later. His next priority was managing the 2 pregnant female orcs under his observation. Both were marked as high-priority protected assets, their abdomens visibly swollen with developing fetuses. Only a few real-world hours had passed since the assessment concluded, yet the stretch time frame inside the divine realm meant their pregnancies had progressed for months within this space. Guhan could not apply his reproductive ability to them in their current gestational state, as external interference risked triggering miscarriages. Unable to impose direct behavioral restrictions on the pair, he could only watch as they wreaked havoc across his territory. Strangers to this realm, they regarded all native life with unbridled hostility. Deprived of their bows, the 2 females vented their aggression by tearing apart local plant life with their bare hands, growling and snarling in constant agitation. Guhan activated the translation module on his handheld device, and transcribed dialogue instantly appeared across the screen. "Ghana, we cannot keep surviving like this." One orc ripped apart a thick vine and roared in frustration. "I have endured days of starvation. If this continues, my unborn young will perish inside me. I can barely summon the strength to walk. Where on earth has Dalton vanished to?" A short distance away, the orc named Ghana leaned against a massive tree root, her face twisted with unmasked resentment. "Leave me out of your complaints." Ghana snapped her head around, grinding her teeth sharply. "You knew Dalton was my bonded partner, yet you still— Never mind. Perhaps dying in this alien land is a fitting end for us both. Do you believe I chose this?" The second orc shouted defensively. "Something warped my consciousness the moment we stepped foot here. I lost all self-control with nothing but primal biological urges driving my actions. And you are equally pregnant, for that matter. I have asked you countless times whose child you carry, yet you have never given me a straight answer. Gana's body stiffened abruptly, violent tremors racking her frame as she recalled a horrific sequence of events. Enough, Vina. Cease this conversation immediately. Gana waved her hand irritably. I spotted an open plain deeper within this territory when I first wandered here in search of your group. I recall seeing herds of domesticated fauna being raised in that area. Guhan scratched the bridge of his nose awkwardly while reading the translated exchange. The interpersonal drama unfolding between the three orcs was far more tangled than he had anticipated. Dalton and Gana were originally a committed bonded pair within their tribe. Guhan's reproductive ability had matched Dalton with Vina to produce offspring, inadvertently fracturing the original couple's bond. As for the fetus developing inside Gana's womb, it was a hybrid life form conceived from genetic fusion between the orc female and the giant golden beetle. Guhan cleared his throat and used his mental authority to airdrop a large flock of six-winged chickens directly into the orc's immediate vicinity. A flurry of beating wings echoed overhead. Starvation spurred an intense survival instinct within the two female orcs, who broke free from the thorny vine banyan's entanglements and scrambled frantically toward the descending livestock. Months of subsisting on wild berries and small prey had left both emaciated and weakened. Vina lunged forward and seized one panicking six-winged chicken in her grip. She held the strange avian creature up, staring in awe at its six fluttering wings and four kicking limbs. Look at this creature, Gana. I always theorized four-legged chickens existed somewhere in the world. Vina swallowed thickly with hunger. A crisp crack cut through the air as Vina bit cleanly through the chicken's neck, tearing its warm carcass into two bleeding halves with her bare hands. Nearby, Gana snapped the neck of her own captured chicken and pressed her mouth to the wound to drink its warm blood. The rich, fresh fluid revitalized her weary body instantly. She swore she had never tasted such nourishing meat, superior to any game hunted within her native tribal lands. Vina chewed through raw flesh with visible satisfaction, crunching bone fragments between her powerful jaws. This meat is incredible. If we could capture breeding stock to bring back to our tribe, the tribal chieftain would reward us handsomely. Quit daydreaming. Gana wiped blood from her jawline and shot her companion a disdainful glare. A full stomach still cannot silence your rambling. We will never find our way back to our homeland tribe again. The two orcs were mid-feast when a pained scream echoed down from above. A greenish-gray body crashed heavily onto the grass before them with a heavy thud, spraying dirt outward on impact. It was Dalton, exhausted and battered from prolonged skirmishes against the Divine Realm's native flora, his skin drained to an ashen gray hue from overexertion. The two women hurried to his side. Gana's brows knotted into a tight frown at the sight of his disheveled state. Where are your lower body coverings? Dalton pushed himself shakily upright, pulled his knees to his chest, buried his face against his legs, and broke down into ragged sobs. The towering 2-meter orc warrior wept openly like a distraught child. The traumatic experience of being forcibly paired with numerous foreign species under an invisible external compulsion had completely shattered his mental defenses. Vina kicked his shoulders sharply out of exasperation. What reason do you have for bawling like a cowardly whelp? She scolded sharply. Where were you hiding during all the danger? Here, eat this leftover chicken. The flesh is surprisingly palatable. She extended the half-eaten carcass toward him. Dalton lifted his tear-streaked face, took the meat mechanically, and began forcing chunks down his throat without conscious enjoyment. Gana turned her gaze away, unwilling to acknowledge his pitiful state. The three figures sat silently upon the grass amid the sickening crunch of splintering bone, enveloped in an oppressively awkward atmosphere. Once they had eaten their fill, Gana let out a heavy sigh, filled with despair. We must have angered the presiding deity of this domain, Gana murmured as she surveyed the unfamiliar landscape surrounding them. The tribal elder taught us every realm is forged and governed by divine beings. Our tribe flourished for generations under divine protection, yet we invaded this sacred land on our chieftain's orders. Return to our old home is no longer possible for any of us. Her two companions continued chewing their meal noisily, unfazed by her somber reflection. Who cares about going back? This chicken is fantastic, Vina mumbled through a mouthful of raw meat. Truly better than the stews cooked by Akana back home, Dalton muttered in quiet agreement. Gana pressed her palm to her forehead in resignation. Fine then. You two clearly belong together. I will step aside from whatever bond you have formed. I have never held romantic affection for Dalton. My intended partner has always been Vigo. Vina paused her eating to state firmly. Vigo has no merit whatsoever. A true warrior stands at the front lines with a shield to shield their kin, yet he only hides behind his bow and arrows. You would fare far better staying with me, Dalton argued indignantly. Ghana reached out and twisted Dalton's ear hard. I spoke merely in jest. There is no need for you to take my words seriously, you ungrateful brute. The trio devolved into shouting matches, escalating into physical scuffles between the two women while Dalton attempted to pull them apart with obvious delight beneath his concerned expression. Guhan watched the chaotic scene with a throbbing headache, yet he was relieved the orcs had temporarily abandoned their destructive rampage across his divine realm. He could maintain a steady supply of six-winged chicken livestock to sustain them, and given enough time, they would gradually settle into stable lives within his domain. Their current fractured social dynamics remained problematic, however. Both females had referenced divine forces during their argument, which gave Guhan a viable avenue to integrate them fully into his realm, guiding them to construct their own tribal settlement under his divine oversight. After departing the city and returning to Dongjiang University, Guhan headed straight for the campus library to plan his newly acquired 2 million credit points with careful calculation. Now that the three orcs had stabilized within his divine realm, his next objective was guiding them to reproduce, build an organized tribal community, and develop a basic tribal civilization. He walked to the racial studies section of the library shelf, retrieved several heavy textbooks documenting orc behavioral patterns and tribal structural frameworks, and settled down in a secluded corner to study. According to the reference material, orc societies operated under patriarchal clan systems built around warrior worship and fiercely defended territorial borders. Bloodline heritage carried immense cultural significance within their communities. Orcs boasted formidable physical combat capabilities paired with moderate to low cognitive capacity, making them ideal candidates for early-stage domestication and management. Guhan skimmed through several chapters of theoretical material before deciding to check on the three orcs inside his divine realm once more. He planned to manifest small divine miracles to earn their reverence, and eventually construct a primitive beast god altar within their settlement. Numerous injured orcs, maimed from intertribal warfare, were frequently sold in bulk on the inter-realm trade market for low prices. 10 individuals bundled together for only 500,000 credit points. He intended to purchase these disabled specimens cheaply to rapidly expand the orc population through controlled breeding programs. When Guhan shifted his perception back to the settlement built by the orcs, his excited expression froze instantly. Their makeshift living grounds lay in complete ruin. Ghana's lifeless body crumpled on the ground. A massive gaping wound torn open across her chest, soaking the surrounding weeds in her blood, her eyes fixed wide open in a final state of agony. Dalton stood nearby gasping heavily, his gray skin etched with wild terror and frantic madness. You are tainted by unholy corruption. The beast god will never pardon your sins. Dalton screamed hysterically. A short distance away, Vina knelt on the ground, her hands clamped tightly around a small infant's neck. Guhan zoomed his divine vision forward and drew in a sharp breath of shock at the sight. This newborn creature bore no resemblance to a pure-blooded orc whatsoever. The infant's physique dwarfed standard orc newborns, crowned with two thick, jagged insectoid horns sprouting from its skull. Its skin retained the coarse texture of orc flesh overlaid with glossy golden chitin plating that shimmered with metallic sheen under sunlight. Most horrifying of all, the hybrid possessed 4 muscular arms tipped with razor-sharp hooked claws, paired with a pair of translucent, partially unfurled insect wings sprouting from its upper back. This was the insect-orc hybrid fetus birthed by Ghana. The infant's razor claws had sliced deep, bleeding gashes across Vina's forearms during her struggle with the newborn. Die? Die right now. Vina gritted her teeth with unrestrained fury and squeezed her hands shut with brutal force. Before Guhan could intervene, the infant's neck snapped clean beneath her grip. Vina tossed the lifeless hybrid carcass aside with undisguised revulsion and turned to face Dalton. Ghana was corrupted by a malignant abomination and bore cursed spawn spawned by an evil entity, Vina panted shakily. We must cremate both bodies to purge this corruption, otherwise the dark force that tainted her will hunt us down next. Dalton nodded his head in vehement agreement. The pair frantically gathered dry vines and dead branches to pile over Ghana's corpse alongside the deceased hybrid infant. With no available fire sources, Dalton struck 2 hard stones together violently, attempting to generate sparks through friction. Guhan stared at the 2 bodies with quiet dismay over the wasted biological resources and credit value. Every single detail of his carefully laid plans had spiraled entirely out of his control. He had assumed unlimited food supplies would pacify the three orcs and encourage stable reproduction, drastically underestimating the inherent xenophobia hardwired into all intelligent species. Deeply ingrained cultural norms and moral boundaries prevented sapient races from accepting hybrid offspring born from cross-species fusion under any circumstances. Even if Janna was the infant's mother, she would struggle to fully accept the creature's grotesque appearance. Dalton and Vina would find it even harder to come to terms with what they saw. Both originated from tribes with well-established social systems, and their inherent beliefs rejected cross-species life forms. This directly conflicted with Guhan's skill capabilities. Intelligent beings possessed rational thought, established customs, and ingrained traditions. Forcing them to produce cross-species offspring would shatter their core values, potentially triggering internal massacres and the total collapse of their communities. Guhan massaged his temples and let out a long sigh of relief. He was glad he had acted rationally instead of impulsively spending his 2 million credit points to purchase large numbers of demi-humans. If he had poured vast sums to acquire dozens of demi-humans and used his forced breeding ability to pair them, creating hordes of misshapen cross-species creatures, the demi-humans residing within his god realm would have slaughtered those abominations alongside their own kin without hesitation. His massive investment of credit points would have been completely wasted. It seemed his plan to build a civilization led by demi-humans had to be put on hold for the time being. Conventional developmental paths were entirely incompatible with his unique abilities. Guhan glanced toward the two figures laboring to build a fire deep within his god realm and pondered silently to himself. Vina would go into labor soon enough, and her child would be a pure-blooded orc with no inherent abnormalities. He would keep these two as foundational breeding stock for now. The growth of his god realm required careful, long-term planning. Guhan withdrew his consciousness from the god realm, leaned back against his chair, and sank into deep contemplation. To ascend to true godhood, the native species of his god realm had to evolve into transcendent life forms, and only intelligent races could pave a viable path towards such evolution in the early stages. Guhan's path diverged drastically from ordinary god rulers. His fundamental strategy lay in assimilating the strengths of countless races to forge powerful custom cross-species beings. To resolve the resistance intelligent life held against foreign hybrid creatures, he could not rely on externally purchased intelligent species. He needed to cultivate intelligent life from scratch inside his god realm, constructing stable social frameworks and embedding widespread acceptance of hybrid civilizations within their collective cognition. Yet such organic societal evolution demanded centuries of slow development, and time was the one resource Guhan lacked the most. Elves were famously tolerant toward all races, innately attuned to magic and blessed with superior intellect. However, they came at an exorbitant price, 60,000 credit points for a single adult elf. Moreover, elven transcendence relied on magic cultivation, a discipline whose associated resources were nearly as costly as the human immortal cultivation system. Perhaps he could seek out alternative intelligent species. As long as he could utilize controlled interbreeding, unlocking pathways to transcendence would not pose an insurmountable obstacle. His ideal candidates needed formidable combat prowess, rapid reproductive cycles, docile temperaments, and absolute obedience to his will. The image of the deceased insect orc infant flashed across Guhan's mind. Exoskeletons, razor-sharp hooked claws, 4 functional arms. It was a natural-born killing machine. Guhan shot upright in his seat, his eyes blazing with excitement. The Zerg. How could he have overlooked them entirely? He stood up at once, returned the demi-human reference books to their shelf, and hurried toward the neglected, rarely visited section at the very back of the library. The bookshelves dedicated to Zerg research stood deserted, coated in a thin layer of accumulated dust. Within this world, Zerg were widely regarded as an extremely niche subject of study. They boasted overwhelming combat power and exponential reproduction rates, yet consumed enormous amounts of resources while possessing fleeting lifespans. Their most crippling flaw was their complete lack of rational intelligence, making them impossible for god rulers to discipline and command. Devoid of individual consciousness, Zerg could never build structured civilizations nor generate high-quality faith energy, severely capping the upper limit of any god realm built around them. A small number of god rulers would occasionally buy minor Zerg variants, ants and other harmless bugs, to serve as decomposers, clearing away waste and corpses within their realms, or rear fleshy worm breeds as a sustainable food source. No one seriously considered deploying Zerg as frontline combat troops. For combat-capable Zerg breeds invariably brought catastrophic chaos to the god realms they inhabited. Guhan pulled a copy of the illustrated handbook of Zerg species from the shelf and skimmed through its pages rapidly, cross-referencing the listed data with real-time pricing on his handheld terminal's trading marketplace. A wide grin spread across his face as he scanned the price tags. Compared to demi-humans that cost hundreds of thousands of credits apiece, Zerg were practically dirt cheap. An entire colony of ordinary ants cost merely 10 credit points. Even larger battle-adapted Zerg specimens were priced far lower than equivalent tier creatures from other races. Guhan scanned the table of contents quickly and locked onto a specific entry. Black Armored Ant Classification. Cross-species Zerg organism traits. Hive-based communal social structure. Grows to the size of a large hound. Formidable physical defense with crushing mandible force. Unconditionally obedient to the Queen's commands lifespan. Worker-soldier ants, 10 years. Ant Queen, 20 years. Guhan stroked his chin, running thorough simulations through his mind. The fatal weakness of all Zerg was their lack of individual intelligence, barring them from producing premium faith energy and forming organized civilizations. Ants, however, operated under strict collective hive mentalities where the colony's survival superseded individual needs above all else. What if he crossbred black armored ants with intelligent life forms? If he used forced breeding to engineer a single intelligent mutated ant queen, every ant spawned by this queen would inherit rational thought, laying the foundation for a fully functional humanoid Zerg civilization. The hive system granted the ant queen absolute dominion over the colony. Guhan would have no need to micromanage the countless low-tier Zerg drones. So long as he maintained total control over every ant queen, the entire humanoid Zerg race would fall firmly under his sway. Unwavering obedience, lightning-fast reproduction, ferocious battle capabilities. They checked every box on Guhan's checklist for his ideal developmental roadmap. Guhan pulled out his handheld terminal, ready to look up the market price of black armored ants, when an unread message suddenly popped up at the top of his screen. It was from his head teacher, Qin Lin. "Where are you? Report to the principal's office immediately. Your first place ranking in the recent assessment earned official commendation from the Municipal Education Bureau for Dongjiang University. The principal intends to personally reward you." A reward? Guhan's spirits lifted instantly. He stuffed the Zerg handbook back onto its shelf and rushed out of the library. The principal's office occupied the top floor of Dongjiang University's administrative building. Guhan knocked on the door to find Principal Zhang Anhai seated behind a spacious executive desk. "Guhan, come in and take a seat." Zhang Anhai greeted him warmly with a wave of his hand. Guhan pulled out a chair and sat down. "I always knew placing you in Class 1 was the right decision." Zhang Anhai poured him a glass of water and slid it across the desk. "You've brought immense prestige to our university with this achievement." "I only achieved this result thanks to the guidance from my teachers," Guhan replied politely out of routine courtesy. Zhang Anhai waved off his formal remark and cut straight to the point. "We can skip the formal pleasantries. Your outstanding assessment results and sharp tactical judgment over your god realm prompted the Education Bureau to issue new policies supporting academic coursework for god realm students. Your performance acted as a critical catalyst for these reforms, so the school is obligated to recognize your contribution." Guhan raised an eyebrow. He hoped the school would refrain from publicizing this detail. Now that universities tied god realm awakening privileges to academic grades, the rest of the student body would likely harbor resentment toward him. Following deliberation by the school committee, your full university tuition for all 4 years will be fully waived. Zhang Anhai pushed an official tuition exemption certificate toward Guhan. A surge of joy washed over Guhan. Though Dongjiang University's tuition fees were relatively modest, the cumulative cost across 4 years would easily exceed 100,000 credit points. Saving this, some would let him purchase numerous valuable supplies for his god realm. "There is more." Zhang Anhai lowered his voice slightly. "I will personally gift you a grade E divine structure. You may select whichever variant suits your needs." Guhan froze in shock. A grade E divine structure. These were far from ordinary god realm constructions. Divine structures directly altered and enhanced the fundamental operating rules of a god realm, granting powerful passive buffs and unique functional perks. Even the lowest quality grade E divine structure sold for a starting price of 500,000 credit points on the open market, making them rarer and more valuable than divine flora. Zhang Anhai was a demigod who specialized in life domain cultivation. Guhan had not expected such generous compensation from him. "Principal, This gift is far too valuable. Guhan responded with cautious hesitation. There is no need to decline. Zhang Anhai leaned back into his chair and smiled at him. Leave a one-time coordinate for your god realm with me. Take your time researching reference materials and carefully pick a structure aligned with your long-term god realm development strategy. Do not fixate solely on the most expensive options. Once you decide, inform Qin Lin, and I will transmit the structure directly to your realm at any time. I understand. Thank you very much, Principal. Guhan provided a temporary access coordinate for his god realm without delay. In the back of his mind, he resolved to research divine structures that boosted Zerg breeding efficiency or improved the environmental conditions within his god realm the moment he returned to his dorm. Now that we have settled the rewards, the warm smile faded from Zhang Anhai's face as he rubbed his hands together. We need to discuss a more pressing matter. Guhan's expression turned guarded, his heart sinking. Naturally, nothing in this world came truly free of obligation. Zhang Anhai cleared his throat, his tone growing somewhat awkward. Your first-place assessment ranking has drawn considerable public attention, and the principals from several rival universities are displeased with the outcome. Guhan remained silent, waiting for the principal to continue. The Intercollegiate God Warrior Professional League is scheduled to begin shortly. Those university heads banded together and demanded you accept student challengers during the tournament. Guhan's eyes widened, pointing a finger toward his own chest in disbelief. They want to challenge me? Principal, surely there is some misunderstanding. My God realm is only ranked grade C. The God Warrior Professional League served as a prestigious showcase for the top genius students across all universities. Nearly every participant possessed a grade S God realm foundation. Matches in the league included both cross-realm invasion skirmishes and full-scale army battles. Yet Guhan currently possessed 0 viable combat units within his realm. I got carried away by the moment and agreed on your behalf without consulting you first, Zhang Anhai laughed awkwardly. Guhan stared blankly, utterly exasperated. So the principal had gone out boasting on his behalf, and now Guhan was left to clean up the mess. I cannot possibly participate in this competition, Guhan refused firmly. My god realm sustained heavy damage during the recent assessment battles, and I have no capable fighting creatures whatsoever. How am I meant to compete against students with established high-tier species units? Do not be so defeatist. Zhang Anhai set down his teacup and spoke earnestly. The league does not kick off for another 3 months. 3 months is more than ample time for you to cultivate a formidable fighting force. 3 months is nowhere near enough time. Guhan shook his head repeatedly. My competitors already command mature high-grade species from the start, while I am stuck with a grade C realm and limited funds and troops. I have already coordinated with Qin Lin to register multiple students from your key class 1 alongside you for team participation. You will be able to coordinate tactics and support one another during matches. Guhan fell quiet. The allure of the grade E divine structure had dimmed considerably. Participation was not entirely without merit, however. Competing against peers would grant valuable insight into the overall power hierarchy and serve as meaningful real-world combat experience. He currently held 2 million credit points alongside the pending grade E divine structure reward. If his Zerg interbreeding project proceeded smoothly, 3 months would give him sufficient time to raise a fully functional humanoid Zerg army of considerable scale. Still, he was unwilling to expose the true capabilities of his unique skills so soon. He needed to leverage this situation to squeeze further benefits from the principal. Very well. I will do my best, Guhan sighed theatrically. Could you also provide me with an automated breeding workstation? Zhang Anhai stared at him in surprise, confused by the request. What use would you have for such equipment? Your cultivation path is not focused on life domain resource production. The automated breeding workstation was cutting-edge technology developed by biotech corporations, originally designed for life domain god rulers, to optimize the selective breeding of high-yield crops and livestock breeds. Marketing materials advertised its utility for hybridizing superior animal strains, yet the actual success rate for animal crossbreeding remained abysmally low in practice. The device carried a price tag of 500,000 credit points, and Zhang Anhai owned one himself that had sat idle for years. Its notoriously low success rate demanded massive time investments into trial and error experimentation, making it impractical for anyone lacking extreme patience. My innate breeding-focused skill has strong synergy with this device. I cannot afford to hire dedicated support staff for my god realm, so this equipment will help my realm achieve full self-sufficiency in resource production. Guhan scratched his head and put on a harmless, unassuming act. Very well. I happen to own an unused unit that I can give to you. Do not sink excessive time into tinkering with it, though it is far less efficient than its advertisements claim. Zhang Anhai issued a gentle warning while producing a physical resource access card from his palm. Guhan accepted the card with both hands and expressed his gratitude profusely. The workstation would serve as the perfect cover to explain any unusual progress in his realm, shielding his true abilities from outside suspicion. I also know your younger sister is entering her final year of high school. My only additional condition is that you secure a top 10 overall ranking in the league. In exchange, I will waive her full university tuition fees and offer you extra rewards on top of our current agreement. A knock sounded against the office door mid-conversation. Enter. Qin Lin, Guhan's head teacher, stepped into the room and glanced toward Guhan standing before the principal's desk. Principal, you wish to see me? Perfect timing, Qin. Zhang Anhai smiled and gestured toward Guhan. This young man has agreed to take part in the God Warrior League in 3 months' time. Walk him through the official registration procedures and brief him on full tournament regulations. Additionally, guide him through professional aptitude selection and discuss whether he intends to awaken his God Realm core. Guhan caught the unfamiliar term and grew curious about another form of awakening process. What does awakening a God Realm core entail? He turned to question Qin Lin directly. But that content is reserved for 4th-year university students. Qin Lin began to object before Zhang Anhai cut her off. He will never stand a chance against wealthy, privileged prodigies in the professional league without this power boost. Every one of his rivals has already undergone the awakening. Explain the mechanics to Guhan and let him make his own decision. Qin Lin nodded in compliance to the principal's request and led Guhan out of the principal's office. The two walked side by side down the tree-lined campus pathway after exiting the administrative building. Groups of students cast frequent sideways glances and whispered amongst themselves. Word of Guhan's first-place assessment result had already spread campus-wide. Qin Lin steered Guhan down a quieter side path before elaborating on the subject. Textbooks only cover foundational theory. Higher-level knowledge such as this is intentionally restricted by the Education Bureau to protect ordinary students from unnecessary risk, Qin Lin explained as they walked forward. The God Realm core acts as the critical anchor establishing an irreversible deep energetic link between a God ruler and their personal God Realm. Awakening the core grants you direct control over temporal flow within your realm, with a maximum time acceleration multiplier of 10-fold. All physical enhancements you receive from your God Realm's feedback will also increase 10-fold in potency. Guhan froze in his tracks, stunned by this revelation. A 10-fold time acceleration factor. 1 day in the outside world equaled 1 full year within the God Realm. With maximum acceleration enabled, a single external day translated to 10 years of elapsed time inside his realm. This was an invaluable boon for Guhan, who desperately needed extra time to nurture his burgeoning Zerg army and allow his mutated awakened flora to mature fully. Do not grow overconfident. Qin Lin turned to face him, observing his elated reaction with a note of caution. Every benefit comes with a steep cost. Once your God Realm core is awakened, your own fate will be permanently intertwined with that of your realm. Prosperity and ruin will be shared mutually. In what sense exactly? Prior to awakening the core, your God Realm exists merely as a separate dimension connected only through your consciousness. If every life form inside your realm is wiped out, you only need to rebuild your realm from scratch with no lasting bodily harm. Qin Lin's tone turned grave and solemn. After core awakening, every change occurring within your realm directly impacts your physical constitution. Thriving growth in your God Realm elevates your life tier and extends your natural lifespan. Severe damage inflicted upon your realm or its core will inflict grievous physical wounds upon you. If the core is completely shattered, Qin Lin paused briefly before delivering the stark conclusion. You will perish instantly alongside your realm. Guhan felt a sharp jolt of shock. It was no wonder official records omitted all information regarding God Realm cores. The stakes involved mortal survival, prompting strict governmental control over this knowledge. For this exact reason, life domain God rulers will almost never awaken their core unless absolutely necessary. Qin Lin continued walking forward. Without powerful defensive forces guarding the core within their realms, the temporal speed boost is not worth the lethal risk of ruin for those who simply farm crops and livestock for profit. Does every God Warrior domain ruler awaken their core? Guhan quickened his pace to keep up. Nearly all who pursue the warrior path do so, though it is not a universal choice, Qin Lin clarified. Warrior-focused God rulers face constant threats of cross-realm invasions, plunder, and open divine warfare. Without the temporal advantages granted by an awakened core, they cannot compete against peers who have undergone the awakening process. The final choice always rests with the individual. The trade-off was plain to see. Remain an ordinary person living a safe, unremarkable life, or gamble with your very life for accelerated realm development and overwhelming personal power. Guhan rapidly weighed all variables in his mind. Other god rulers feared hostile incursions that could destroy their core, yet Guhan faced no such anxiety. Any creature bold enough to breach the boundaries of his god realm, be it a colossal stellar behemoth or any other form of organic life, would immediately be subjected to his forced breeding ability upon entry. Any invader who dared trespass on his god realm would be forced into perpetual breeding cycles until their vitality was depleted entirely. The principal had manipulated him into joining the League using his sister's tuition fees as leverage, yet this predicament had unlocked an entirely new tier of power for him regardless. With his resolve firmly set, Guhan voiced his decision. Teacher Qin, I choose to awaken my god realm core. Qin Lin showed no surprise at his answer. Very well. I will drive you to the Municipal Public Security Bureau to complete the official awakening application paperwork. Qin Lin led Guhan to the campus parking lot and boarded a silver hover vehicle together. The aircraft lifted off and headed toward the downtown district of Jiangqing. A heavy silence filled the cabin as Qin Lin operated the flight controls before breaking the quiet. Choosing this path means you must exercise extreme vigilance moving forward. Do not grow overly anxious. However, the Chinese federal government provides comprehensive safety protections for enrolled student god rulers. The League also implements strict combat safeguards to prevent fatal injuries during tournament matches. Guhan leaned back against the passenger seat and watched the urban skyline rush past outside the window. What happens after graduation? He asked quietly. Those who awaken their god realm core wield transcendent power that places them beyond the jurisdiction of standard mortal legal frameworks. Qin Lin replied. Open conflicts between god rulers over scarce resources are a daily occurrence in adult society, though fatal attacks are rarely carried out in broad daylight due to the country's established legal order. What benefits would military service offer for someone like me? Guhan asked opportunistically. Enlisting with the National Military Defense Department will grant you the protective blessing of national-tier official divinities. Aligning yourself with major top-tier factions will similarly secure powerful divine patronage and greatly improve your personal safety. Guhan absorbed this information with a silent nod. Transcendent power reshaped mortal society in ways far more complex than his textbook lessons had explained. What he currently witnessed was merely the tip of a vast iceberg governing God realm civilization. Confirming his decision to continue his university studies was fully justified. I honestly did not anticipate you agreeing to the Principal's League terms. Qin Lin spent the remainder of the journey outlining detailed rules and mechanics of the God Warrior Professional League for Guhan's benefit. The hovercraft gently landed outside Jiangqing Municipal Public Security Bureau. Qin Lin escorted Guhan through the main lobby to a dedicated service counter handling all God Realm administrative affairs, where a queue of other students waited to submit their own core awakening applications. Guhan scanned the official awakening agreement and full liability waiver via a QR code with careful attention, only to pause when he reached the final signature section. I have already reached legal adulthood. Why is a legal guardian signature required for this form? Qin Lin answered matter-of-factly. You retain official student status, and core awakening carries extreme inherent risks. Administrative protocol mandates formal consent from your legal guardians. Guhan massaged his temples, troubled by this new complication. He had previously assured his parents he would specialize solely in the safe life domain track. Convincing them to approve his high-risk core awakening would prove incredibly difficult. His father had once walked the warrior god ruler path in his youth. It stood to reason he would understand the inherent risks. Yet it was equally possible his father knew far more about core awakening dangers than Guhan realized. Are you encountering some difficulty? Qin Lin noticed his visible distress. It is nothing serious. I am just figuring out how to broach this topic with my family. Guhan coughed awkwardly to mask his unease. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the bureau lobby, Tang Jichao spotted Guhan by chance and pointed toward him for the man standing beside him. Brother Wu-Ying, look over there. That is Guhan. Tang Wu-Ying shot a dismissive glance at Guhan, a mocking smirk tugging at his lips. So this is the son of that man. Truly an unpleasant coincidence. Jichao, your defeat to his son during today's assessment brought shame upon our entire Tang clan. Stung by his cousin's reprimand, Tang Jichao's face burned with embarrassment. He abruptly stood up and stormed straight toward Guhan's location. Well, look who we have here. Tang Jichao blocked Gu Han's spot at the counter without hesitation. You think you cheated the assessment system out of a first-place ranking through sheer luck, so now you have the audacity to apply for a God Realm Core Awakening. Gu Han did not even bother lifting his gaze, continuing to review the application documents laid out on the counter. He had no memory of this individual. The man was likely another participant from the assessment examination, clearly seeking to provoke a confrontation for petty clout. Infuriated by being completely ignored, Tang Jichao slammed his palm hard against the countertop directly in front of Gu Han. I am speaking to you, are you deaf? Gu Han slowly raised his head and swept a dismissive gaze over Tang Jichao's figure from head to toe. Do I know you? Tang Jichao. Tang Jichao gritted his teeth and announced his name, fully expecting Gu Han to display recognition and nervousness. Never heard of you. Gu Han turned toward Qin Lin for clarification. Teacher Qin, who is this person? Is he enrolled at our university? Qin Lin lowered her voice to warn him quietly. He is not our student. Tang Jichao ranked third in today's assessment and attends Jiangxing University. I see. Gu Han drew out the word lazily before waving his hand dismissively. Still unfamiliar. Kindly step aside. Do not block public walkways. He had paid minimal attention to the other competitors after securing first place, preoccupied with concealing his abnormal abilities. Lin Chuxue was the only rival whose name he had registered from the ranking list. Tang Jichao had come with clear hostile intent, and Gu Han saw no reason to treat him with basic civility. You are asking for trouble. Tang Jichao's face flushed with burning humiliation. Gu Han, I challenge you to an official duel. Have the courage to face me in combat. Tang Jichao shouted loud enough to draw curious stares from everyone throughout the bureau lobby. Not free. Go cool off somewhere else and stop craving attention. Gu Han turned to leave, having no patience for this troublemaker. Stop right there. Tang Jichao's face flushed with rage as he lunged forward and grabbed Gu Han's wrist tightly. You little brat. Who do you think you're putting on airs for? The second the words left his mouth, Gu Han let out a loud yell. Officers! Help! This man is picking a fight and attempting physical assault. Tang Jichao froze and instinctively tried to let go, but it was already too late. Two uniformed auxiliary police officers rushed over upon hearing the commotion. What's going on here? Let go of him this instant. The bullier of the two officers barked sharply, yanking Tang Jichao away forcefully. Tang Jichao stumbled backward, nearly falling flat on his face. How dare you lay hands on me? Let me go right now. This is just a harmless prank. Do you have any idea who my father is? My dad is Tang Si. The burly officer's expression darkened. Acting so brazenly inside the police station lobby was nothing short of defying law enforcement authority. He twisted Tang Jichao's arm and pinned it firmly against his back. I don't care if your father is Tang San or Tang Si. This is a police station. Keep up this hostile attitude, and I will take formal enforcement action against you on the spot. Young man, please calm down and refrain from causing a disturbance. Qin Lin quickly stepped forward, positioning herself in front of Gu Han. Gu Han stoked the flames further. Exactly. We live under the rule of law now. Your father's status means nothing here. Every corner of this lobby is covered by surveillance cameras. Officers, I have no prior acquaintance with this person. He grabbed me without provocation and hurled vulgar insults nonstop. You're lying. I'll get back at you. Tang Jichao thrashed wildly in restraint. That's enough. A deep voice cut through the chaos. Tang Wuing walked over accompanied by an elderly, neatly dressed steward. Jichao, don't disgrace our family name in public like this. Tang Wuing scolded his cousin before turning toward the two auxiliary police officers with a polite smile. Officers, my apologies for the disruption. My young cousin is hot-headed and immature. We are all schoolmates, and we can resolve this matter privately among ourselves. Cousin, make him let me go right now. Tang Jichao shouted stubbornly. I'll have you removed from your post. This remark pushed the burly officer over the edge. Oh really? Let's see about that. Without hesitation, the officer swept his leg against the back of Tang Jichao's knees, sending him crashing to his knees on the floor. He swiftly pulled out a pair of handcuffs and snapped them shut around Tang Jichao's wrists behind his back. You are being detained for obstructing official duties and provoking public disorder. You're coming with me to the interrogation room. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers gathered nearby. The smile faded completely from Tang Wuing's face. He pressed a hand to his forehead with a weary sigh and inclined his head to give a quiet instruction to the steward beside him. Handle this situation. The steward bowed slightly, his gaze lingering briefly on the identification number marked on the officer's shoulder patch. He retrieved a communicator from his pocket and dialed a number, speaking into the device in a low tone for a few moments before stepping forward and holding the communicator out toward the officer's ear. The officer frowned with suspicion as he listened to the voice coming through the device. Guhan stood a short distance away, unable to make out the exact words being spoken, yet the furious shouting erupting from the other end of the line was unmistakable. The officer's face shifted visibly, morphing from fury to shock, then settling into resentful resignation. Gritting his teeth, his features hardened into a stony scowl as he unlocked the handcuffs. Tang Jichao scrambled to his feet, rubbing his reddened wrists. He glared venomously at Guhan, his gaze filled with unbridled hostility. Guhan had not expected the reckless young man to wield such considerable family influence. Tang Wuing clapped Tang Jichao on the shoulder to warn him to stay composed, then turned back to Guhan with his usual condescending smirk. "Guhan, is it? Count yourself lucky today." He paused briefly, his eyes drifting across the league registration form clutched in Qin Lin's hand. "I look forward to seeing you at the professional league 3 months from now. Jichao will settle today's score with you then." With that, he turned to leave. He halted after only a few steps and glanced back at Guhan, his tone laced with amused mockery. "Oh, and send my regards to Aunt Yanran for me when you get home." Guhan froze on the spot, feeling as though all the blood in his body had turned cold in an instant. Aunt Yanran? That was his mother, Tang Yanran's given name. Every member of this group bore the surname Tang, just like his mother. Could these arrogant, overbearing people be relatives from his mother's family?